The story I'm about to share involves an active criminal case. I created a throwaway account and I'm going to keep a few of the details vague because I don't want to do anything that might cause this bastard to get off with anything less than he deserves. Life in prison, if not the needle. This happened a few years ago close to Christmas time. I work from home and have since the early 2000s. At the time, I was renting a house in a blue-collar middle-class neighborhood. One day, my son, who was in high school at the time, woke up with a raging headache, so I let him stay home. It was mid-morning when my doorbell rang. It wasn't unusual. The neighborhood we lived in was the kind of a prime spot for door-to-door solicitors, Jehovah's Witnesses, and the like. I yelled for my son to get it because he was so much better at getting rid of those types. No joke. The kid has this deadpan stare that would make the devil flinch. Then I just forgot about it. It wasn't until later that night that I even remembered it happened. I asked my son who it was. The landscaper. Gary? That seemed odd. Gary lived across the street from me and ran his own landscaping business. He only came over once in the winter to do some basic maintenance, and he'd just done that the weekend before. No, the other one. His son, I think. That was even weirder. Gary's stepson had moved in with him over the summer. I'd like to claim that my instincts were strong enough to know that something was off with the dude, but honestly, I barely knew he existed. Sometimes he helped Gary do my yard, but for the most part, we never even spoke. Him coming to my door didn't make any sense. What did he want? My son shrugged it off. Well, he didn't say. As soon as I opened the door, he just said sorry and left. Well, if it's important, he'll come back. This didn't come off as anything too concerning. From what I did know of Gary's stepson, he was awkward. Like, no eye contact. Grunting a hello awkward. I gave a passing thought to going over to Gary's to see what he needed, but decided not to bother. It all seemed not important. It wouldn't be until a few months later that I learned it was anything but that. I can't remember exactly how long after it happened, but it was probably less than a week before I got another knock on my door, again early in the morning. This time my son was at school, so I answered it. It was a police officer. They were canvassing the neighborhood looking for a woman who'd gone missing. She'd gone out for a jog a few days before and never come home. The police were asking pretty much everyone on their route if they'd seen anything. I looked at the picture, didn't recognize her, and let the officer know that. I never even thought about the weird visit from Gary's son because honestly, who on earth would have connected the two? They found the missing woman's body a few weeks later. I learned about that on the news. Her body was left in a county burn pile, the kind that landscapers in my area used to dispose of yard waste. That's how they traced it back to my landscaper's stepson. About a month after they found her body, he was arrested. I didn't learn about the rest until I got another knock on the door. This time it was a police detective. He was following up because during the stepson's confession, he admitted that the woman jogger was a victim of opportunity. He'd seen her running past his house. It was about 11 a.m. and nobody was around because it was a weekday and most people in our neighborhood were at work or school, so he chased her down and abducted her. He also informed the detective that he planned to kill a woman that day. The problem was, when he went to his original target's home, her 6-foot, 230-pound teenage son answered the door instead. Realizing that trying to confront that kid would get his ass handed to him, he waited on the porch for a while, hoping that her kid would leave so he could try again. Then he saw the jogger. When the detective was talking, I was detached in a "why are you telling me all this" kind of way. Then I remembered that weird visit from the landscaper's son, and I hadn't realized I was the target he was talking about until then. If my son hadn't stayed home and hadn't answered the door that day, I would have been the woman they pulled out of the brush pile. My son's testimony became pretty important. It was used to show that the landscaper's son wasn't nuts when he committed the crime, as he was logical enough to plan out a murder. He just didn't get to kill the person he wanted to, that person being me. I still have a lot of guilt about everything that happened. First, because I put my son in front of a cold-blooded killer. If that cold-blooded killer wasn't a pussy who only went after people weaker than him, that day could have gone way different. Second, because some other lady technically died in my place. Logically, I know it's not my fault, but on that emotional, non-logical level, I feel horrible because I know if I'd opened the door that day, that lady would still be alive, but maybe I wouldn't be. And even knowing now what I didn't know then, I still wouldn't have answered the door. I was probably around 8 or 9. I lived in a nice little middle-class neighborhood. One of my best friends, Raven, lived across the street diagonally, one house down, so I often spent evenings at her home after school. Raven's mom would always call my mom to let her know I was leaving and to expect me in the next minute or so. This way, Mom knew to unlock her front door. Often, she stood and watched from the screen door to make sure I got across okay. I had begun noticing this beat-up red car, possibly an old VW or Buick, that would pass by almost every night as I ran back across the street. I would always head home just after dark, so possibly around 8:30 anytime I was leaving Raven's house. It was always rolling super slow. The speed limit was 25 miles per hour, and I want to say this vehicle was passed at maybe half that. One night, as I was leaving perhaps a bit later than usual, I stepped out of the side door of Raven's house just as the car was about to pass the house completely. It stopped in the road and backed up as I approached the side of the road. The window rolled down just as the car stopped in front of me. A little woman with short red-brown hair and blue-framed glasses was smiling sweetly. "Hi, sweetheart, it's a little late for you to be out right now, isn't it?" She asked me. Her voice was low and pleasant. "Nah, Mom lets me, I'm just walking home." "Oh, how silly of your mom. There are all kinds of bad people out late at night. Where do you live? I'll give you a ride." Just then, my mom came bursting out of our front door and screamed, "Leave her alone," as she began running to me. The woman's pleasant demeanor dropped and I heard her mutter a word, possibly "shit," as she slammed her foot on the gas and took off at well over the speed limit. She didn't stop at the nearby stop sign, just blasted through it to make her escape. I got a nice lecture that night, but also a lot of tight hugs. My mom was super glad that she chose to look out of the storm door to check on me instead of just letting me wander home. I could have been taken and she told me as much. I can't remember if the police were called, but I never interacted with any officers. This doesn't end here though. Like most little kids, I really like setting up lemonade stands. But unlike most little kids, I also enjoyed hand making and baking cakes and brownies and cookies, and also selling those in my lemonade stands. About 2 weeks after the prior incident, a beautiful sunny Saturday, Mom helped me with the baking and helped me make lemonade and set me up in the front yard with my sign. She had been paranoid ever since the prior incident and had hardly let me out of her sight aside from the school and the bus, and this was no different. She stayed outside with me all the while I sold my little treats to passersby, until she had to run to the restroom. It would obviously be a pain to take everything down and bring it inside, while she went and then to bring it all back out and set it up again. She figured I'd be okay for a few minutes, considering it was the middle of the afternoon, and usually predators aren't that stupid. Mom left me alone for several minutes while she went to the bathroom and presumably went to grab a snack, as she was gone for 10 or so minutes. A familiar face walked up about 8 minutes in. She appeared from around the bushes down the street. I didn't see her in the distance walking up. I honestly saw her stand up from behind some bushes and brush herself off and begin walking towards me. Her clothes were smart and sophisticated looking, almost like a pantsuit. It was a real clash with how ratty her car had been, but that same placating smile was on her face and her eyes glinted behind the same glasses. "Ah, cute, a lemonade stand." "Hi again, sweetie. Sorry for bothering you the other night. I didn't realize how close to home you were. Mom told me not to talk to you, so go away." I said it as meanly as I could muster, but Mom had rightfully made me so frightened of this woman that I'm sure I just sounded like the scared little girl I was. "Come on now, Marie." She spoke my real name, first and last, and my eyes got big. "I'm a good friend of your parents, and I live down the street. Remember, we met at the pool this past summer." I had no recollection of her. "If you're the friend, why'd you leave so quick?" "Mom," I began shouting for my mom. This made her crouch down in the front of my table. Eye to eye with me. "We don't need to do that. I just want to talk to you. You like to bake, right? I have a really fancy kitchen with a nice baker's oven. All sorts of cool gadgets to make baking cupcakes and stuff like this super fun." No, no, no. At this point, I'm literally screaming at the top of my lungs for my mom. I stood up and pushed the table into this woman and started running for the front door. This woman kicked the folding table away and started to chase me until my mom appeared in the doorway. She flung the door open and I barreled into her, and the woman stopped running and stood in the yard. "What are you doing to my daughter?" my mom shouted at her. "Man, your child is rude. I was just trying to buy a cupcake and she shoved the table into me and ran. Now I have lemonade all over my clothes." The woman lied through her teeth. I don't think she was expecting my mom to come back. That's the lady from that night, in the car. I was now trying to get around my mom and hide behind her. My mom pulled out her cell phone and this time I know she called the police. The woman immediately ran off back the direction she came. The cops appeared. One took statements while the other one patrolled the neighborhood searching for her. They ended up finding her car parked at the grocery store that was up the road about half a mile at the other end of the neighborhood. They waited for her to show up and claim it, and she never did. They couldn't find her, and I never saw her again though. This happened to me a few years ago. I live in Arizona, by the way, in the mighty Mojave. I was on my patio having just finished tracking 2 full trash cans of weeds and dead branches from my backyard. My dog, my little buddy, was, as usual for him, following me around like my shadow. It was a nice clear crystal blue day in early May, when it's not too hot and not too cold, and I was feeling pretty good. I became aware of a car pulling up in my driveway, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw that it was a big black SUV. At first, I thought it was an aunt of mine, the only person I know with one. I'm a little surprised by the sudden visit, but whatever. I scoot the trash cans to the side of my gate, and then turn to wave, suddenly stopping. It is at this point that I see the word sheriff written on the side in big red letters. Immediately, I start wondering if I had done something wrong. I was fairly certain that I hadn't, and that's when the thought that something happened to my mom and grandma popped into my head. They were both out at a casino that day, and now I start worrying that there was an accident, or maybe a carjacking. Then the deputy gets out. I see on his face a very large grin, and that threw me off. I approach my gate and quiet down my little buddy, who started growling, as he always does whenever someone or something started coming into the property. He approaches the gate, and I politely greet him. "Hello there, officer. How can I help?" I try to keep a cool exterior while I'm internally, frantically trying to think of a reason as why he would be here. "Hello there, sir," he said, still smiling. "Do you live here?" "Yes, sir." "And are you the only person who lives here?" he asked me. I'm still very nervous and confused, but I answer him. "Yes. We got some calls of complaints about somebody at this address," he explained. I was thrown through another loop, as I had not been expecting that being the reason. I generally keep to myself, and I don't do things like shoot off fireworks or make a lot of noise, so I couldn't imagine what I could have done to warrant someone calling the police on me to complain. While this had been confusing enough already, I was sorely unprepared for what the officer had to say next. "Yeah, we got a call from one of your neighbors that someone at this address, matching your description, has been climbing on the roof and firing a microwave gun into their head in order to change their thoughts." I stand there for what felt like half a minute, letting what he just said to me sink in. "What?" I asked after it had sunk in, not comprehending what I'd just been told really. He was still smiling, and it was now dawning on me that he was actively trying not to laugh, hence the smile, as he calmly repeated what he had said. I then asked him to repeat himself a third time, to which he complied, and my brain finally was able to accept this new piece of information. Several sets of new neighbors had been moving into the area, and one of them was a very odd man. We'll call him Weirdo. Well, Weirdo had moved into a house at the end of the street with his sister. At first he had seemed nice, if maybe a little bit too friendly, after creeping me and a bunch of people out with the weird things he would say, usually about his knife collection. He had also gone and said some very gross sexual things to my mom, who at the time had been working as a cashier at the general store. She almost tossed him out right then and there. His sister I felt bad for, because she was constantly going around town apologizing for the things he would say and do. Anyways, I just knew that Weirdo had been the one to call and complain about me using an imaginary ray gun on him, because that seemed in the ballpark of things he would do. Anyways, the officer told me that he was required to ask me if I had a microwave gun anywhere on the property. At that point in time, part of his job was to ask me if I was in possession of an imaginary ray gun. In a very calm voice, I said, "No, I don't even know what that would look like." "Neither do I," he said, shaking his head, letting out a chuckle. "But I had to ask, and have to ask you to please refrain from using one in the future." It was at that point that his composure slipped some more, and he started to laugh outright. While part of me did find it very funny as well, and I still do, a more pragmatic part of me started to worry about this Weirdo and his delusions involving me. I know that the vast majority of people with mental illnesses are not going to harm anyone, but this dude was constantly going on about his knives and now apparently had some kind of fixation on me. So I found it more unnerving than anything. Once the officer had regained his composure, yet was still smiling, he informed me that he could not tell me who it was that had called it in, but that he felt I should be aware of them. I told him that I had a pretty good idea of who it was and pointed down the street towards his house. He stopped me and said he was going somewhere else on the street and that I should really pay attention as to where he goes next. I nodded, and after he got back in his vehicle and backed out, I watched and waited for him to get to the Weirdo's house. He doesn't. He pulls into the driveway of the house right across the street from mine. I'm absolutely dumbfounded. As the man who had moved in, I had never spoken 2 words to or even met before. Out of some weird instinct, I duck down and peek out through the lattice next to my gate, not wanting to be seen. The officer pulled in and got out of his SUV. He walked right up to the front door and knocked. Instantly, just as he pulled his hand away, the door was wrenched open and out comes the owner screaming his head off. I couldn't quite understand what he was screaming, just that it was something along the lines of, "You can't be here." I was amazed by the composure of the deputy. He remained calm as this lunatic was screaming right in his face and was trying to calm him down. As soon as the guy was calmed down, he cussed at the officer, then stormed back inside and slammed the door behind him. I was afraid that he was going to look in my direction, so I had ducked down behind my fence, which my little buddy took to mean that I wanted to play. The officer drove off, and I heard nothing else about any complaints. Well, the next day, after I had told my mom about all of this, she went and spoke to her friend who was the real estate agent that sold him the house. For those who do not know already, my mom pretty much knows everybody in town. This is how she told me the conversation went. "You know that house you sold across the street from my son?" "Yeah." "Did you know that you sold it to a lunatic?" "Oh man, what do you do now?" I can't help but feel like either I or my mom or her friend should have gotten a phone call or something. Just a casual heads up. Apparently, this guy had a huge reputation in the local real estate community, at least from what my mom's friend hinted. I mean, I respect other people's privacy, but come on. Just a by the way, your neighbor might be slightly mentally ill or deranged or something. Well, not a full week later, I'm in my car driving home from the grocery store. I'm nearing my street and I smell some smoke, and my thought process was along the lines of, oh, someone's probably grilling. I think I'll start thawing and marinating some steaks and throw them on the grill tomorrow. Well, as I'm driving up my street towards my house, I see the lunatic standing in his front yard spraying his house with this garden hose. I just write it off as him being odd, but then I see my mom in my driveway frantically waving. I pull in to see what is happening and look behind me, now seeing the flames. I don't know how my eyes just kind of glazed over the smoke rising from his house, but I could see it now. My mom had seen it and come running, worried that it was my house, and then, seeing that it wasn't, worried that the main gas line would ignite and blow up. The fire department shows up, I think 10 minutes later-ish, and gets to work on it. But the house is not salvageable. He did before they showed up, start running in and pulling stuff out, and set it down in his front yard, going back in and repeating this multiple times. I counted 3 rifles and a handgun and lots of ammo amongst the pile in his front yard, before the fire department arrived and one of the firefighters made him stop. I wasn't listening to what they were saying as I was hiding behind my fence again. I was terrified that this guy was going to jump to the conclusion that the guy with the microwave gun, whom he had called the police on, who had simply talked to him and did nothing else, might have had something to do with all of this. It was later discovered to be an electrical fire caused by faulty wiring. The house burnt down and almost completely to the ground. There were some walls and ceilings still kind of standing, but it was completely unsalvageable. The guy moved away and I didn't hear anything more about him. That was definitely one of the craziest things to happen out here. Definitely in my top 10. In 2008, I was 16 and living in a small town where you'd see the same faces over and over. One of them was this man, mid-30s, scruffy beard, worn-out jacket. Somebody I'd always assumed was just a local drifter. Then I started noticing him more often. He'd be outside the shop when I went in after school, leaning against the fence across from the school gates, or walking a little way behind me on my route home. Always just far enough to make me second-guess myself, but always seeming to be there. One Saturday afternoon, I was walking into town to meet a mate when I saw him at the bus stop. As I passed, he fell into step beside me. "All right, Ryan," he said. I froze for a second. Never even told him my name. He asked if I still lived up by the church. That was where my street was, but I'd never mentioned it to him. Then came more questions. "You usually get back from school around 3, right? Are you still playing football on Tuesdays? And does your mom still work at the post office?" The way he said it, it wasn't casual conversation. It was like he was checking his facts. I told him I had to go and sped up. He just smiled and said, don't worry, I'll catch you another time." A few nights later, after football practice, it was dark and I was walking the quiet route home. From behind me, I heard that same voice. "Not many people out tonight. Good night for a walk." He was standing under a streetlight, hands in his pockets, just smiling. Then he said, "Your bedroom is the one at the back of the house, isn't it?" I didn't answer, just walked as fast as I could without running. After that, I started changing routes, times, everything. I never saw him again after a couple of weeks, but Every time I walk home alone in the dark now, I half expect to hear his voice behind me. A few years later, I was flicking through the local paper and froze. There was his face staring back at me. The article said he'd been arrested for assaulting an elderly woman in her own home. They had a mugshot, and it was exactly how I remembered him. Scruffy beard, dead eyes, and that same unsettling smile. A lot of these posts are about men creeping out women, but this one is a little different. This one takes place in early 2010. I was 16 years old and played lacrosse. I liked girls, of course, but I didn't know much about flirting or anything. One day I was heading home with my lacrosse stuff and a woman walked up to me and asked if I played. I told her yes I did, and I was captain of my team since I was so proud of it. She said that was interesting and asked me how old I was. I told her 16, and she laughed and said she was 38 years old. After this, she told me I was cute and said she'd love to come to one of my lacrosse games. This woman told me to take her number down several times, so I did, but I didn't plan on texting her. The next day, I was talking to a teammate and I told him about the incident. He laughed and told me I was a liar. To prove it, I decided to text her and ask her age again. She responded with, "Baby, I'm 36. Hopefully I'm not too old for you. When's your next game?" I didn't know what to say, so I just showed him and didn't respond. She then double texted me and sent me a few nudes. I was really put off by this, so I told her I was going to practice and didn't respond. Later that night, she texted me and asked what I was doing and asked if I wanted to come over. I told her I can't because I'm doing homework. She told me she could help out and show me a few things, to which I said no, and had a mini panic attack. I turned my phone off and went to bed. A few days later, I was getting ready for my next game when I saw a familiar face in the stands. I look closer and it's her. "Hi, Wheels," she says. My stomach dropped. I mustered the guts to wave back and tried to put it in the back of my mind, but I couldn't shake it. After the game, she came up to me and asked if I wanted to come over. I told her I normally shower after games, and she said I could use hers. I then told her that I and some teammates were hanging out and tried to walk off. This woman grabbed my arm and asked why I'd been dodging her. She asked if I was man enough for her and said I needed to stop playing games. My coach heard and came over and asked if everything was good, to which I said, "Heck no," tried to get her off me. My coach ended up restraining her while I backed away. As I'm walking away, I hear her say, "Whatever," calling me kind of homophobic slurs and even the N-word. I felt so sick I could have vomited. After this, I had to have a meeting with my coach, my parents, and the principal of my school. They explained to me that this woman was wrong and should not have sent me those messages or come to my game. They reassured me that I did nothing wrong, which is why I didn't tell them about this sooner, and that this woman was nutty as squirrel shit. I promised myself and my parents that if I ever saw her again, I'd press charges for stalking and for everything else she did. But I never did. Thanks for listening, guys. For those of you who frequent this sub, the fight or flight response is one that is discussed frequently. Later, this term was updated to fight, flight, or freeze to better encompass the range of human responses to acute stress. Luckily for me, I've never been a freezer. However, that doesn't mean that I always choose one of the other two responses either. Instead, when I am under stress, my brain goes into overdrive, rapidly throwing up possible solutions to my current problem. The more stressed I am, the faster it ticks. In my first post on this sub, I told of a creepy encounter where I chose flight. In the second, I chose to fight. This is the story when my brain decided on a different direction. It was early evening in the late 2000s. I was in college, walking home from class along a busy street in the crappy neighborhood that was all I could afford to live in at the time. Out of nowhere, a car pulls up right next to me and slams on the brakes. "Get in the car," the driver yells out the window at me, immediately aggressive. "What?" I take in the scene. An old small beat-up red car. 4 passengers, all young guys. Relatively fit. I'm badly outnumbered here. Not good. The 2 up front are leaning forward in their seats staring at me. Agitated, most likely on something. Can't see much of the guys in the back except that they're crammed in there. The front 2 are not wearing seat belts. Really not good. On top of that, despite other people being around, I'm in a neighborhood in a city where people don't stop to help, don't usually call the cops, and don't get involved when they witness violence or crimes. No one walking past has slowed down or even turned our way. Really not good. So in the couple of seconds it takes me to soak this in, the driver decides to fill the silence. "Get in the effing car." I said get in the car now. "We are going to a party and you're coming with us. even more aggressively than before. Oh boy, there goes my brain. Tick, 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 tick. This tone, this manner. This guy is expecting me to refuse. He's expecting me to get bitchy. It's like he is just waiting for me to escalate the interaction. This was before I was active online. I'd never heard of incels or MRAs or any of that stuff, but this guy is acting like a guy who is sick of girls refusing his advances. He has had enough, and this time he is going to put his foot down. My brain is throwing up every possible response I can make, playing out the most likely outcome, and knocking them back down one by one. Finally it lands, though I would not know what it is called until many years later. I had just discovered fawn mode. My face cracks into a huge smile. Wow, that sounds like so much fun. Suddenly, I drop the smile to a look of devastation. Oh no, but I can't today. I've got a dinner with my family. That sucks so much. I would rather go to a party, but thanks for inviting me. I start slowly walking up the street, not breaking eye contact, smiling and waving, but trying to close the distance. I'd have to dash if shit goes down. The car creeps along, keeping pace with me. The driver says, "Just get in the car," in far less aggressive way. Wow, I can't believe this is working, I think. I lean into the ditzy persona I have now adopted. I'd love to, really. I want to go so much, but my family is waiting for me up the street. But you guys are so nice. I hope you have a nice time. Next time for sure I'll go. You guys are super fun, right? Yeah, I can tell. The driver's posture is becoming less tense. His grip on the steering wheel is more relaxed, and is that the beginning of a reluctant grin lifting the side of his mouth? He likes the flattery. Damn, girl, you might just be able to shit-talk your way out of this one yet. Yeah, you guys are super fun. Party with some cute guys? I'm so there. Call me for the next one. Promise me you'll call. I stick out my thumb and pinky to the side of my head and start nodding at them. You have to call me. The passenger starts nodding back first and finally slumps back in his seat. Yeah. I keep chattering. Have a lot of fun though. Have extra fun for me. Hate that I can't be there, but promise me you'll have a great time and promise me you'll call me for the next one. The driver finally leans back in his chair and smiles back. Yeah, alright. Next time. And finally drove off. I wave at them. These dummies seem to have forgotten they don't know me from Eve and don't even have my number. I wave at them, wait for them to be out of sight, and finally breathe a sigh of relief. I power walk the last few hundred meters home, go upstairs to tell Matt and Lisa what happened. I probably don't need to mention that living in that city was getting old. So it was summer 2012. I had just quit working my job working for a clinic because the owner was a psycho. That's another wild story that I'll tell another time. I was pretty upset, and I was living in the downtown core of Toronto. I was really worried because I didn't have a backup plan, so I was desperately shooting out resumes everywhere, hoping I could find something quick. I get a call 2 weeks later for an interview. Some company called Ontario Consumers. They sell water heaters, but I had mostly done secretarial or admin work in the past, so I was under the impression that the position I applied for was of that nature. Maybe it was for an admin job at their office. The interview goes well and I'm hired. I'm ecstatic and promptly call my parents to let them know I got a job. I still didn't really know what the job was for. That was my biggest mistake, not inquiring further. I was just so happy I had a job and could continue to afford living in my apartment. The next morning at 9 a.m., I go through a training course. Another woman and I. The videos we watch are about water heaters and why they need to be maintained. They kind of hint that it's a sales position, but everything about it started to feel a little bit weird to me. Something about the people who worked there seemed a bit off, and it was only going to get weirder. I was introduced to my team lead, who took me, the only girl mind you, and a group of 5 20-something-year-old guys in a work van. I'm given my uniform, a stupid gray shirt that says Ontario Consumers and a baseball hat. We are driven to another building and it's packed full of other employees. In front of us are PlayStation 3s, flat-screen Sony TVs, iPads, top quality home appliances, and other various brand new electronics. A guy starts off the meeting. Hey everybody, are you having a great day? And everybody around me screams yes. I'm starting to feel a bit weird. Everyone looks unsettlingly happy, almost too happy. At the meeting, we are told how wonderful we are, and if we work hard, all of our dreams will come true. Yada yada yada. We can have anything we want. The new TV, the new washer and dryer set, etc. But only if we stay positive and work hard. I felt like I was sitting through a cult sermon. I wanted to leave, but I decided to stay because I needed to have a job. We are told about various success stories of other employees and how working for Ontario Consumers were the best job they ever had. After the meeting, the team lead, the 5 other guys, and I are all taken to Subway for lunch. The guys are being super nice to me and telling me I'll do great. Everybody keeps emphasizing, don't stop smiling and always stay positive. I feel unwell. Something isn't right about these folks. We get into the van and drive to some random North York neighborhood in Toronto. I leave my purse and belongings in the car as everyone else does. The boys all go off on their own and I'm told I'm shadowing the team lead for the day. This guy was so nice. Too nice. It made me feel uncomfortable. He smiled like he was deranged in some way. We go door to door trying to get people to update their water heaters. His tactics are vile though. He doesn't outright say it to homeowners, but he acts like we've been sent by Enbridge, natural gas, or energy delivery company in Canada. He says, "Hi, I'm from Ontario Consumers. We were sent to check your water heater to make sure it's up to date and complies with industry standards." He pushes his way into the door. Do I take my shoes off here or leave them on? He did this over and over again, to homeowners who were seniors and homeowners who didn't even speak English. They were signing a contract for new water heaters without their knowledge, thinking they were just signing some paperwork confirming that somebody had checked the boiler. When I asked if we were scamming these people, his face went from happy to outright scary. He looked at me like I had committed some heinous crime. Don't ever say that to me again. We are not scamming people. The look on his face really frightened me and I was stuck with him alone. For a while, we walked house to house in silence. Some of the house's owners that opened the door seemed to be housewives and my team lead always made an effort to flirt with them and they loved it. The more he flirted with them, the less they paid attention to what they were signing. We walked for hours in the hot summer sun. I kept asking him when we got to go home and he just said, "Well, it depends." I felt like I was in that Goosebumps book where the kids are made to trick or treat on Halloween for hours and hours by some aliens, not being allowed to stop, have to hit every house. It's been hours now that we've been outside and I ask him what time it is. The sun has gone down and it's August, so it must have been late. He tells me it's 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock, I'm thinking in my head. I freaking say, I have a date in an hour. I'm going to be late. I really did, with the guy who is now my boyfriend, by the way. I had no idea this job required you to work so late. I was only shadowing, so it wasn't a real work shift for me. I asked if I could go get my bag out of the car and just go home. The team lead said, "No, my phone is in the van, so I can't even text my date that I'm going to be very late." The team lead says that we have to leave together. At 11, he takes me back to the van and we start driving around to find the other guys and they all pile into the van as well. The lead says he feels bad about my date. Sure he did. I roll. And says he'll drop me off at home. I'm in such a hurry that I agree. When I get to my building, he steps outside with me and says, "I like you. I want you to work for my team and I think you'll be a good asset." I'm in such a rush, I just agree quickly that I'll be back in the morning for my next shift. Huge mistake. I go out for my date, have a wonderful evening, and then wake up the next morning for work. The job sucked and the hours were long, walking around with no breaks in the humidity. I guess I agreed to come back because I thought I could work this crappy job in the meantime, keep sending out resumes, and grab the next best job opportunity that comes my way. Day 2 was a bigger nightmare and actually quite scary for me. Went to this morning's cult-like pep talk again, grabbed lunch, and then headed for another neighborhood, this time around the Dundas West area, West Toronto. Also, we had a new team member with us. He was pretty quiet, and like me, he seemed uncomfortable too. This time the team lead says that he'll spend 3 hours with me going door to door, and that I'm on my own after that. This neighborhood had a lot of creepy old looking houses. The team lead had me trying to push my way into people's homes aggressively. I hated every second of this. I knew in my heart that it was a scam, but I wrestled with myself because I knew I needed the money. Even still, after I found out it was a commission-based position and my team lead relied on me to make him money, the more recruits, the more money, he was getting upset because I was too shy and not trying hard enough to make people sign contracts. At one point, this part still upsets me. We go into a house and the owner seems nice, but as soon as he closes the door with us inside, he pulls out his cell phone and starts filming us. "I know what you were up to. You're the scum of the earth. I work for the Toronto Star and I know all about your scamming operation." I tried covering my face and began tearing up. The situation was getting out of control. The guy uttered more threats at me, saying he'd share the video everywhere and actually threatening to physically harm my team lead. I saw my chance and bolted out the door. The team lead followed behind me and the man yelled at us if we ever stepped on his property again, he'd call the police. One of his neighbors was on their porch and he screamed at them, "Don't trust these little shits. They're going to rip you off." My heart was pounding and my team lead suggested that we walk farther away down the street before we start again. We did a few more houses together, and then he told me I was too good to go off by myself. I'm really shy and sensitive, and the idea of having to go into people's homes on my own frightened me. Also, in my experience, most boilers are in people's basements. Every house I entered, my heart was pounding. I was so thankful when a little old lady would open the door. I'd explain why I was there, go to the basement, and because I didn't want to scam people, I just couldn't do it. I would just look at the boiler's last inspection date and say, "Okay, ma'am, looks like your boiler is just fine," and run out of there. I went into one guy's house and he was home alone, and he stood so close to me the entire time. I didn't like how close he was, and he kept touching my shoulders and the small part of my back. Better believe I got out of there so fast. At the end of the day, I came back to the van. I didn't sell a single boiler, and I'm glad. The team lead, however, was not, and said I lacked a positive attitude and enthusiasm. The guys got in the van, and we started to drive away when I looked back in the van and saw the other new guy was missing. I informed the lead, and he acted like he didn't care. I saw the guy had left his sunglasses, a book, and his cell phone behind, and we needed to drive around to find him. We drove around for a total of 5 minutes, and then the team lead said, guess he went home. Let's get out of here and go home too." I complained. "He barely looked," I said. "He's got to be around here." The lead ignored me and drove us back to the office. As soon as we got there, I left as quickly as I could and went home. I got into bed and called my parents and told them about my day and how upset I was by the job. It really drained my energy, and I felt like I had to be on high alert all the time in people's creepy basements, especially a 5-foot female like myself. When I told my dad about being in basements alone, my dad is super overprotective, by the way, and worrisome. He demanded I quit. I told him I already planned to. 2 days of this garbage was enough for me. I go to sleep feeling thankful the day is over. The next morning, around the time I should have gone to work, I called the team lead. Our conversation is as follows. Me: "Hi, Brad." "Hey, where are you?" he said. "We're about to start." "I'm not coming. After yesterday, I decided I'm going to quit." His voice went from upbeat and bubbly to angry. "What do you mean you quit?" "I just didn't feel comfortable yesterday after that guy filmed us, and then me being sent into basements alone in homes of people I don't know. It's not safe." "That's BS. This job is safe. There are plenty of other girls doing this job." "So what if something did happen to me and I didn't show up to the van at the end of the night? Would you have left me behind like that other guy last night?" Now I'm yelling. He doesn't answer my question. "Stop acting like that, and don't let the team down. I'm really disappointed in you. I thought you had potential." "No, I'm done. I don't feel safe, and you don't care about the well-being of your team. So screw you, Brad." I hung up the phone and never went back. So, team lead and the rest of Ontario consumers, you can screw right off. Multi-level marketing jobs are the worst. FYI, if you're in Canada and somebody like this comes to your door, saying they want to inspect your water heater or boiler, try to scare you into signing a 10+ year contract for a new free water heater, it's a scam. To avoid such a scam, tell the salesman and asshole that you are not the homeowners. They are by law not allowed to make any changes to a home without the actual homeowner's consent. Just tell them you rent the house instead. When I was pregnant with my first child, who was born in 2013, I joined an online birth club, community for moms who were due the same month. Eventually, this led to a smaller Facebook group which allowed for more personal conversations. As you can imagine, being in a group of people whose only common connection is when your kid is born can lead to coming across some interesting characters, who you would probably never interact with otherwise. Anyways, over time bonds were formed and moms shared a lot of their daily life, whether it was about their kids or otherwise. Among this group was Leslie Villatora. Almost a year after our February 10th, 2013 babies were born, she announced another pregnancy, and she was due in June 2014. Of course, everybody congratulated her and was looking forward to the new updates. Leslie mostly posted about her everyday life and her twins, annoyances living with her sister-in-law, feeling stuck, and how she and her family were really struggling for money and couldn't wait to be able to move into their own place. These posts about their financial issues got more and more detailed and frequent, and some people sent baby supplies to try and help out a struggling mom. With her due date approaching about 4 weeks away, another mom posted and tagged her to check on her and ask how everything was going, since she had seemed to completely stop posting and commenting in the group. Somebody got the idea to Google her name, and that's when the news story popped up that about 3 weeks prior to this post to check on her, Leslie was arrested for her connection to her boyfriend's attempted murder of a woman in their town. This sent the entire group down a rabbit hole of Facebook investigation and piecing together the story until all the details came out and her trial started. Leslie's side is that she was dropping her boyfriend Chad Horn off to a friend's house and was waiting in a nearby park to pick him up when he was done there, and that she had no knowledge of what he was there to do. She had her twin 1-year-old daughters and nephew in the car with her and was obviously 9 months pregnant at the time. The real story is that she was his getaway driver and he was hired as a hitman to kill the woman he was dropped off to. She purchased supplies that Chad took with him to use in the attack, which were ultimately what led her to a guilty verdict and being complicit with the crimes. Chad forced his way into the home at gunpoint while this woman and her 2 children were home. He made her go out and start her vehicle while he stayed inside with her and the kids. And when she came back, he bound her hands with zip ties, slit her throat, and fired 1 shot at her which missed, then fled the home in the woman's car. The woman survived all of this and was able to get to the neighbor's house for help. Chad called 911 twice to try to report 2 made-up shootings at different locations to lead them away. There was a police chase with him and he ended up dying somehow. There was a suspect who may have hired Chad for a hit on this woman, but no evidence has been found on him either. After 70, search warrants have been issued. After much Facebook stalking from the group at the time of this trial, we suspected that it may have been the woman's ex-husband. Just speculation though, as none of it has been confirmed. She was married to a woman at the time of this hit, and I'm assuming her children are from her previous marriage. Again, this is all speculation, but it seems the likely answer for me. There was a lot of doubt surrounding Leslie's trial. Some jurors that gave a guilty verdict came out and said they regretted it later and wished they could change it, that she shouldn't be held accountable for Chad's crimes and intentions. I personally believe without a doubt that Leslie knew what Chad intended to do. I think their sole motive was money, with all of her posts in the group being about their financial struggles, and she was growing more and more desperate to get out of the sister's house because they were not happy there. Whether or not she knew the details of this family or would have agreed to help, knowing the woman's young kids were also home. Who knows, but I do believe she knew her role was to be the getaway driver for Chad. Leslie was found guilty in 2015 for her part in the attempted murder, burglary, kidnapping, and sentenced to 43 years in prison. I was texting with the girl I was interested in. We had hung out at my place playing pool and darts a few times, but we had yet to go on our first official date. During the course of our text conversation, I had brought up my love for the outdoors and camping. She said she loved that stuff too. Let's go. This made me happy. I asked her when she wanted to do it, and she said, right now, silly. Camping is something that you typically plan for at least a little bit, I thought, but I had all the equipment, a fridge full of beer, and some food to throw over a fire. I know of more spots than the average SoCal resident, and it's only 8 o'clock, so I enthusiastically said, yeah, let's do it. I love impulsive adventures, but still, what a strange girl. She was hanging out with her friend that I had never met, and I was hanging out with my boss from the country club I bartended at. And both of our friends agreed it would be fun, but maybe with less enthusiasm F and I had about it. Due to the no-name rule, I'll be using initials for the entirety of this post. Instead of picking them up, they decided they want us to drive over. Then they would be waiting in the car and would follow us to the campsite. I found out later that F's friend K wanted a quick out if she wasn't feeling it. I and my buddy E get to their house, and they're already waiting in a running car for us. Off we go to my favorite spot, and they're following close behind. An hour and a half later, we get to my favorite camp and it's closed. Oh no. I took us to one out of the way, and I don't know of any others in this area. I decided to just wing it and drive north. Surely we'll find something. We end up passing a small camp called Lake Peru. I think it was Peru. It'd been a while, but if it wasn't Peru, then it was something in that area. We pull into a mostly empty camp, and I find a great spot well removed from all of the other sites. It's surrounded 200 degrees by a wall of thick and tall oaks. We all get out of our vehicles, and I see F for the first time that night. She had on full makeup, knee-high boots, and a small dress. What a strange girl. I burst out in laughter. I couldn't help myself, almost in tears laughing. I asked her, what are you wearing? You knew I said camping, right? Do you have something to change into? With no shame, she looked me right in the eye and said she wanted to look good for me. And yes, she had a change of clothes, but she was quite happy at the moment. She assured me she is quite competent at all things outdoors and that she knows what she's doing. I did not believe that for a moment. Over the years, she proved me wrong, though, showing herself to be accomplished at climbing and canyoneering, knowing more knots than me and being able to swing an axe like a lumberjack, but At the time, I was secretly thinking this had to be her first time in the woods. Our friends didn't hit it off, not even a little bit. About an hour into hanging out, Kay retired to the tent that I gave her to share with my buddy, and my buddy decided to go sleep in the car. So it's just me and F hanging out having a great time. She's still in club clothes, and we decide to go on a little night hike. Come to this little clearing in the woods and are staring up at the beautiful stars in the night sky. We hear a snap in the bush about 20 feet away. F gives me a worried look and says we need to go back. I try not to mock her when I tell her that the woods have animals. There's literally nothing to worry about in this area. The only thing that's even a little dangerous in these parts is a mountain lion, and we had a better chance of getting simultaneously struck by lightning and bitten by a shark than we had of a lion attacking a person and a half. She's tiny. Dumb joke. She tells me she knows all of this stuff, but this is different. She insisted that she can sense danger and that we need to go now. I could sense her genuine fear, so I didn't try to convince her of how irrational she was acting yet. I decided to lead her back to camp. She relaxed for about 10 minutes, then was right back to her happy extroverted self. She directed me to sit in a chair where I was facing the fire with the thickest of the woods directly in my line of sight behind that. She brought out an old CD player and hit play. Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen started playing as she walked behind the fire and started dancing seductively. Not trashy. Stripper seductive, but slow, classy, fluid movements. She was casting a 40-foot shadow on the wall of trees behind her, so that I was seeing a bonfire. Beautiful F dancing directly behind the flames that were licking the night sky. And behind that, a massive 40-foot giant shadow imitating her every move. Combined with it being the first time I'd ever heard the Leonard Cohen song and the overall ambience, I was transported to another world. It was surreal. Beautiful even. I think this is when I fell in love. But still, what a strange girl. I was speechless after her performance. I didn't compliment her because there weren't words to express how moved I was. I think the look on my face gave away how blown away I was. She left, kissed me on my forehead, and finally went and changed into camp clothes. We sat talking as the fire cracked rhythmically, which kept me in a mildly euphoric state. Then there was another loud and obvious snap in the woods. She had a torch in her hand and directed the beam into the forest. I was actually a little bit surprised when she caught a set of glowing eyes just staring at us. In a whisper, she asked me what it is. I laugh and tell her that it's probably a raccoon, but it could be literally dozens of things, but the one thing I'm positive of is that it's not dangerous. She bluntly tells me that I'm wrong and that we are absolutely in danger. As I do every time camping, I sit by the fire with a pocket knife and a piece of wood, trying to whittle some sort of sculpture. I've done this at least 100 times and nothing has ever come out of it, except maybe the thing that kind of sort of reassembled the spoon that one time. Every time there was a noise in the bush, F snapped a flashlight beam in its direction. About half the time she was catching glowing eyes and she was on edge. I was going overboard pressing that it was nothing, which relaxed her a bit, but it was obvious that she trusted her instincts a little bit more than my confidence. More snaps in the brush. This time the flashlight beam picked up multiple sets of eyes. Odd. This makes me nearly positive that it's raccoons. Over the next 4 hours, F's vigilance on the flashlight would have made World War II plane spotters jealous. As our fire dies almost completely out and we're encompassed by the pitch black of night, it is obvious that whatever family of the little critters that's off in the woods has taken quite an interest to us. There are sets of eyes that have us half surrounded for at least 180 degrees. When F used to tell this story, there were dozens of eyes. I can't confirm that because honestly I wasn't that interested in it. I'm personally sure it was at least 7 or 8 sets of eyes that I saw from how completely we were surrounded. But like I said, I wasn't really paying attention. F swears it was dozens. She is 100% on this. I don't really have any reason not to believe her because she was the one super tuned in to what was happening. The fire goes completely out. F does another sweep with the light. The glowing eyes are right smack up at the perimeter on the oak wall next to our camp. For the first time, I'm a tiny bit unnerved. Another sound. She clicks on the light. What she saw, not 5 feet from where me, is sitting is a large wolf head down to the ground, butt in the air in obvious pounce position. Its teeth were bared and nose wrinkled in a snarl. I saw the same thing minus the teeth. My logical brain knows there are no wolves in that area and haven't been for a very long time. What was sitting there coiled ready to smoke me had to be the biggest coyote I've ever seen. In SoCal, these are typically skinny, unhealthy, fearful animals. This thing was massive, had a full coat, and was 100% creeping on me. I've spent so many hundreds of hours in this wilderness. and I've never seen anything like it. Everybody who knows me and F knows this is a true story, but people that don't know us don't believe us, and honestly, I don't blame them. It's so far removed from typical coyote characteristic that I can't even begin to explain it, but I swear on everything that it's true. So the wolf coyote thing is ready to pounce, and in that moment, that F isn't proud of, she drops the light and screams a blood-curdling scream that would have secured her as a B-movie horror actress for a generation. The light blinks out as it hits the ground, and I pop from my chair, blindly holding my little pocket knife in front of me. It only took me a second or two to realize the coyote wasn't going to attack because it was literally almost on me. The attack would have happened already. I pick the light off the ground and give it some taps, and it comes to life. No wolf, no coyote, no glowing eyes. I think F's scream scared them back to Wyoming. E and K pop out of the car and tent. People from other campsites come running up. We tell the story a few times as new people keep arriving to see what the fuss was about. F insisted that it was wolves. It couldn't have been, but it's not a fight I'm going to take after she was right about everything else. K is scared to death. She pulls my buddy E into the tent to keep her safe. F and I calm down enough to crawl into our tent. About 30 minutes later, there's an earthquake. She looks me in the eyes and quite seriously says that we made that happen. In loving memory of FFG, I miss you. You always told this thing better than I. Really not the way I wanted to spend my Saturday morning, but sadly, here we are. Writing this as I sit down more scared and anxious than I have ever been beyond belief. I'm a 25-year-old female who was at my friend's flat, female and her sister and also another female friend. Lots of good vibes and laughs. Just normal girly time. At some point a trusted nice guy, a bit of a simp, but somebody we wouldn't feel uncomfortable around. Women know what I mean by this, especially about the nice best friend to girl guy. Anyway, he was very approachable at first. Very polite and sweet, but I was always told to never trust anyone who is too nice on first appearance. It's usually an overcompensation for something or to hide something evidently darker, as I found out later on. He slowly became more argumentative and had a very patronizing, condescending tone, which would arise for no reason. He acted like he was being completely normal despite being passive-aggressive. It was a quick turn. Moving on, he attempted to take my water bottle. Sounds stupid, I know, and insisted to everyone for no reason when I took it back out of his pocket, which is weird. Anyway, who puts someone else's Evian bottle in their pocket? He then insisted it was his and brought it in with him and genuinely seemed to believe it was. This is when I got a weird gut feeling that something wasn't right. We then proceeded to have a back and forth. Nothing harsh was said, but I told him he thinks he's the smartest person in the room and I could see right through him. Quite an assumption to make about someone, but as humans we sense danger. Well, not everyone sadly, but hey, please learn from this story. Then to top this already slightly alarming experience, he started pulling very vulgar sex faces and making hand motions gesturing to penetrating me. Example, he spread his fingers in the air and proceeded to flick his tongue in, not even a joke type way between mates. He did it every time he got the chance. He was pretending to do some weird sex motion. Needless to say, I was very disgusted and I barely even knew him, and it wasn't in a banter type way where it was left off a little one-off, but he repeatedly did it. He did this to me as no one was looking and stood slightly behind my friend who was talking so he could make these ugly gestures to me. He kept asking me to come back to his and told me he wants to take me abroad as he needs someone to look after him when drunk. I told him I'm not a babysitter in a bit of a joke way, and he went straight away and very stiff and defensive. The slightest thing seemed to trigger him. After being in a high alert abusive situation for many years, sadly you recognize even more so that something in the air just isn't right. Even if you're not 100% of your gut feeling, always follow it because it is there for a reason. There's absolutely no need for taking chances. Sadly, the world is too unkind. Anyway, my friend had gone to bed. Friend's sister was getting ready to leave, but I was very reluctant to be left alone with him for obvious reasons. She ordered a taxi and asked him to walk her out to the taxi. He agreed, and I told him very bluntly I'm locking him out, and his immediate response in a very nonchalant manner was, yeah, I would. That for some reason was that made me double down wholeheartedly on making sure I locked him out. Despite my friends maybe getting upset that I've locked another friend out, I wasn't too concerned about what they would say, as I knew in my heart this man had horrible intentions. I got the vibe he was pre-warning me, a bit like an animal playing with his food before eating. He was enjoying being weird and making me feel weird. As he walked out the door with my friend, I immediately locked the door. And I'm thankful that I did that because usually I am a complete fairy and would forget, but in this instance, I am forever grateful I turned the lock. Thinking I was free of this weird creep, I heard talking at the door and somebody trying to slightly push open it. I told him I was feeling scared and didn't feel comfortable at all in his presence. I called him a weirdo and a creep, and his response was, "I'm not that weird," but said in an inquisitive way like he was trying to convince himself, and at no point did he take offense to my dramatic accusations and labels. I told him he had suppressed sexual urges. Bear in mind, this is at 3 a.m. in a block of flats and we were having a conversation through the locked door, and he won't be taking them out on me. He then proceeded to say, "Aw," but not in a cute way, in a very apathetic, weird tone. Even in these interactions, I was panicking more because instead of just thinking he was a runaround normal creep, I was digging into something much weirder and darker. He proceeded to attempt to open the door again, begging to just talk to me for 2 minutes, and weirdly enough, I couldn't make out if it was actually him through the door, as I have bad eyes, but I knew it was him obviously due to the convo we had. He stood outside for 15 minutes pretending to book a taxi and kept repeating that our mutual friend was gone. He then left and I was on high alert, so I was standing by the door, and out of nowhere, a white guy, the original guy in the story, is biracial, walked in, so I noticed straight away it wasn't the same person. He walked straight over to the door and covered the peephole with his thumb. This made my heart literally quiver. I was scared for my safety in a way that was very unsettling, and I hope no one else feels that fear, but those that have know your heart just sinks in a horrible way. This door was the only thing separating me from an utter evil predator. What made it so weird was that he was attempting to get a friend to come around and let's all go out uptown. It was weird as nobody was dressed for such outings, but looking back, that second guy who came to the door ever so randomly and covered the peephole looks like he left something on the floor, but I am obviously not going outside to check. As I panicked so bad, I don't remember if I saw him leave the little hallway / communal entrance, but I'm not sure if he did. I woke my friend to tell her. She could see I was so scared. I told her what happened, and she said she had never had anything like this happen and that she doesn't know any other older type white guys. She is a 24-year-old Jamaican woman and just doesn't happen to know any middle-aged white guys. It wouldn't have been so scary, but the way he just came right out to the door and immediately covered the peephole like he knew somebody would be looking through there. I believe maybe this was connected because what are the odds of this happening so close to each other? About 10 minutes difference and not having some form of connection. Either way, please remember locking doors saves lives. Simple as that. If that door had been opened when he had attempted due to being unlocked, who knows what I would have endured, and I have never had anything this creepy happen, and I live in a big city and have lived a slightly unconventional lifestyle, so I've seen it all. People are very dangerous, so please be aware. If you feel something isn't right, it's probably not. This happened 2 years ago when I went to Ibiza with a friend for a week during the summer holidays. First of all, the trip began quite weirdly with our luggage being flown to another country by mistake. It was quite interesting not to have any change of clothes in such a heat. Also, I know a lot of people love Ibiza and consider it a great place to party. My experience was quite different. My friends and I bought tickets to a few shows in advance to see DJs that we liked, but we ended up never seeing their performance. We always arrived a bit in advance. The DJs were very late, or the time of the show was wrong on our tickets, and the music at the clubs wasn't to our liking and was especially loud. We ended up having headaches quite rapidly and going home before even witnessing the opening songs for our favorite artists. Anyways, apart from those pre-booked shows, we had some free nights left. Basically, we filled our arrangements because we picked a nice hotel on the south coast of the island, which was mostly occupied by older people. The atmosphere was calm and quite nice for a family holiday, but not for 23-year-olds thirsting for a week of party. To meet new people, we were basically forced during the day to go online, and we chose the app Tinder to provide us with multiple types of opportunities. The story I'm about to tell is one that still makes me flinch when I think about it. That night, my friends got a date on Tinder with a rich Russian girl who invited him over to a 5-star hotel. I was very happy for him, but I was left alone and didn't quite know what to do with myself. I come from Geneva, and during my teenage years, I spent a lot of time with a very good gay friend of mine. Knowing the time of ambience gay bars and clubs usually have, I decided to search for one in Ibiza and to go there simply to meet open-minded people and have a good chat. I found a bar not too far away, like 30 minutes on foot, and went there. I must admit, I wasn't really reassured walking alone in the dark streets of the city, but staying in the light of the lampposts were enough to comfort me. When I finally arrived at the bar, I was greeted by an atmosphere quite different from what I'm used to. The main activity was on the terrace, where there were a lot of high tables around, which people talked standing. No great laughs, no dancing, no mixing between groups. To get in the mood for initiating conversation with people not as open as I expected, I went inside and noted that nobody was there except for the bartender, who greeted me with a smile and talked to me with enthusiasm. That type of socialization is exactly what I'm used to at such places, and it warmed my heart to realize that at least one person was friendly. Hoping that only initiating contact with the people outside was enough to get them to welcome a stranger and share a talk with her, I went to the terrace and asked for a lighter. What I got was basically, "Wow, she's alone. Sucks," or even, "How stupid are you, a heterosexual coming to a homosexual establishment?" punctuated by mocking laughs. Bitter disappointment. Having walked a great distance to come to this place, I decided to have a last drink before seeking a more open-minded bar nearby, so I returned inside and shared my experience with the friendly bartender. He comforted me by telling me those people were idiots and that I had my place among them, then offered me a few free shots, which he weirdly drank with me. He clearly didn't want me to go, and since he was nicer than people I met that night, I didn't want to disappoint and kept smiling. I still tried to nicely refuse more alcohol, which I felt that I didn't need because of my thoughts of returning to the hotel after this unwelcomed experience. Anyways, I managed to declare my probably 5th shot in a row as my last and asked for the directions to the bathroom, which I wanted to visit before a probably long walk back to the hotel. The bartender explained that it was in the corner of the room, showing it to me from his bar. So I went there, and after trying the door, realized the bathroom was already occupied, so I stood in front of it, waiting for the person inside to leave. For the rest of the story to be clear, I'll specify that there was a 2-meter wall hiding my sight from the bar. After 30 seconds or so of waiting, I see the light of the bathroom going out and hear the person inside crying out in frustration. About a moment later, the bartender appeared behind me and placed his hands on me, pressing me against the wall. Having drunk a few shots moments before, I was quite slow to react and only managed to get in a cocoon-like defensive position when I realized my stops and no's didn't resonate with him. Fortunately for me, the guy that was in the bathroom got out after a minute or so, which made the bartender flee. I then used the bathroom and got out of that place as fast as I could, then called the cab and went back to the hotel shaken up. It's only later that I realized 2 things. 1. Based on my experience, I didn't even consider the possibility of the bartender being interested in women, which was a mistake. 2. There must have been a distant switch for the light in the bathroom at the bar. The objective of the bartender was to turn off the light while I was in the toilet and to insert himself inside. Probably to assault me somehow. No need to say that I got very lucky and that this experience has taught me to never underestimate any situation. Fun fact, I sent a text to my friend saying something very bad just happened to me and that I was going back to the hotel, to which he replied, "Haha, okay. Yeah, pheromones." He cried the next day when he realized what happened. I never held a grudge against him because there was simply nothing he could have done, except shorten his night and deny himself a fun and physical time. I've never gone out alone since, but, well, COVID wouldn't have it anyway. I don't plan on visiting any other bars or clubs alone in the future, and I respect the people who have the courage to do so, knowing all that could happen to them. I hope none of you have to meet cutting bartenders like that, so peace out. Okay, so I'm 23 female, and this happened when I was stripping. I'm trying to keep this account as safe for work as possible, so there won't be anything graphic in here, and respect to the trade. I know that it may be refreshing to some and disappointing to others, but so be it, I guess. I was a waitress at the club for a while before I started dancing, so I knew the regular customers. When I started actually dancing at the club, it was a whole new monster. People that I knew treated me a whole lot differently, almost like I was a different person. I was no longer the waitress in the tank top and denim shorts. I was now the dancer with heels and lingerie. Totally different vibes once I crossed over. So there was this one customer. He was maybe a year or 2 older than me. I don't know much about him personally other than he worked at a hardware store and came in every other week with some work friends. He was nice, albeit a little bit on the shy side. One night, 2 of his coworkers decided to pay for a private dance for him. This would be where I came into the mix. Thing is, he just didn't want to get a lap dance once we got back there. He just sort of vented about his life and the girl that he was dating that he was sure was either cheating on him or didn't love him anymore. I just sort of sat there and listened. I didn't know what else to do. Once the time in the room was up, I walked him back to his table and gave him a hug and told him thank you for keeping me company. Then I went about on my regular duties. So this seemed to spark something in him. He messaged me on Facebook, which was a completely private account. He told me thank you for listening to him and asked if he could take me out for dinner. I told him that I had a boyfriend but that I appreciated his offer. Then the messages got more frequent over the next 2 days. He started asking me things like, "Why are you so evil?" I didn't respond and he started calling me a variety of slurs. I ended up just blocking him from Facebook because I was so creeped out by the switch in him that flipped. I opened my Instagram like a day later to an assortment of messages. One of them mentioned that if he ended up hurting somebody, it was going to be my fault and that his family would forever hate me. I blocked him from that too and called the police. The police didn't seem to follow up from my understanding. I was never told anything about it, but this happened within about a 4-day period or so I feel I should have heard something. I got lucky when I went back to work and he ended up showing up. He came over to me looking like he had been crying. Thankfully, I had notified our manager at the time and the head bouncer, who quickly apprehended him and phoned the police. To those that may ask, he was admitted for psychological treatment after the incident, and to my knowledge hasn't been released. I do hope that he gets the help that he needs and can one day possibly live a normal life again, but I can't help but feel that I dodged a bullet. Had I not told anyone, I could potentially be food for worms right now. I've since left stripping in order to pursue a different career, all unrelated to this one incident. I've had many weird experiences in the club in all my time working there, between waitressing, dancing, and bartending, but this is the one that always sort of stuck in my head. I've done well to move past it, but there is always just a lingering thought. My childhood was spent in Santa Ana, California. I have pretty good memories there before my dad moved us down to Texas. There is one weird instance that I remembered, so I asked my mom about it and will now share it with you. We lived in this decently sized apartment complex. We were on the 4th floor, but there were up to 5 to 6 floors that I can remember. One of our upstairs neighbors was this beautiful Chinese lady named Sheila, with the cutest Pomeranian puppy. She was young, thin, had long black hair, and had the prettiest eyes and wore the prettiest clothing. She would always call my sister and me over to play with the puppy. Sometimes she'd invite us inside her home. I remember her apartment seemed strange to me. All of her walls had shelves lined with porcelain dolls that I thought were very creepy. She also had Hello Kitty and Friends plushies all over her couch and even on her floor. She had a huge pink frilly rug. I remember that as a child something about her apartment seemed off, but I didn't care because I loved having a pretty older friend with a dog. Sheila took a particular liking to me. I'm Mexican American, but everyone has told me I look Asian. This should be relevant later. Anywho, she kept on telling me I looked just like her porcelain dolls and that I was so beautiful. I was flattered because I looked up to Sheila almost like an older cool sister. My sister and I started frequenting Sheila's apartment more often, mainly to play with the cute puppy. Her boyfriend started coming over more often. I remember thinking he was too old for her and too ugly. I would catch him staring at me a lot, and at the time I couldn't understand why, but he made me feel weird. One time I got into a huge fight with the neighborhood kids and my sister, so I stopped playing with them and decided to pay Sheila a visit. Sheila seemed off, like she didn't really want me to be there. She had these like pink see-through glasses, and I remember I could see purple makeup. But now that I think about it, it might have been a bruise. From the background I can hear her boyfriend say, "Let her come in. I have a painting for her." Sheila reluctantly lets me in. The entire flat was dark. All the blinds were closed and it was super messy inside. Her boyfriend then hands me a painting he made of Winnie the Pooh. It's not very well drawn and I don't really like Winnie the Pooh that much, but he says, "For you, because you are cute like Winnie the Pooh." I say thank you and quickly forget and start looking for the puppy. Once I find the puppy, I begin to pet it and cuddle it when I hear from behind something that I now know is moaning. I turn to Sheila and her boyfriend are full on making out. I remember it very clearly because I have never seen anyone, for example, my parents kissing so sloppily and with tongues. I felt embarrassed and just looked away and continued to play with the dog and pretended I wasn't paying attention, but it continued for way too long. I turn around once more and he is fondling her. At this point I feel very weird and just tell her I need to go and leave. Fast forward a few days later and it's my birthday. Sheila comes over to drop off my birthday gift and it's a porcelain doll. I pretend to like it and thank her and go back to playing with my friends. I can hear my mom talking with her at the doorway and my mom keeps saying no over and over again. She seems like she is getting angry but still trying to keep her composure. Finally, she shuts the door and gets back to the party. few days later, I tell my mom that I'm going to Sheila's to play with her dog. She tells me no and to go play with the neighbor kids instead, and she doesn't want me going with Sheila anymore. I don't think much of it and go play with the kids instead. Fast forward a few weeks, I stop by Sheila's just to see that the apartment is empty. The blinds are open and I can see that the apartment is empty inside. Fast forward to today, and my mom tells me something that shocked me. That day at my party, Sheila was asking me if she could take me to Beijing with her. That she would buy me whatever I wanted and that she wanted to show her family how a Mexican kid looked so much like them. I guess because I looked Asian in her eyes. She kept telling my mom that I could be a model and that she could possibly help me become one as well. My mom thought she was joking at first, but Sheila was persistent. My mom said she basically had to shove her out the door because she wasn't leaving or taking no for an answer. I'm not sure what Sheila wanted with me, if that was even her real name. I just hope wherever she is now that she's okay, and I hope she never truly meant to hurt me. So, just to clarify, I was 15, home alone, and lived on a Native American reservation at the time. Stuff would happen all the time. Hearing things, walking at night, you would see shadows, etc. The kids would call them skinwalkers. Besides the point, this was during the day my mom was at work, labor and delivery, and I, dropped out of school due to a medical situation. So, I had this huge window in my room. I'm talking really wide, taking about a whole section of one wall, just enough space to fit a vanity and my TV on both sides. I was chilling, smoking weed, and walking around my room. I showered at one point, so I changed. All while a man was sitting on a wooden post directly across from my backyard watching me. I didn't have curtains when we first moved in. They had ugly blinds hanging up. I tore them down immediately and put up really cool blankets, lol. And during the day, I would tie them up so light would come in. Arizona is a beautiful state, so to see the desert every morning along with the sunrise is amazing. Hours passed and my mom comes home and we go to Taco Bell. I vividly remember being on Twitter in my room eating my cheese dillas when all of a sudden the light in the hallway went off. So I was like, okay, it's my mom. But then my door opened slightly and my mind was racing at that point. It was about 9:30 p.m. at night. My lights were off in my room and the only light was my phone. I start calling my cats names and we had 3, so that's when I see him. A tall man in a red baseball hat and jeans. I was going through a pretty hard time, so I had a depression pit going on and started screaming and throwing hangers and empty soda cans, screaming for my mom, who was home and whose room was right next to mine. She comes out, flips my light on, and there is nobody there. I'm telling her to call the police, and that there was a man in my room. So my mom gets her switchblade from her room and walks me through every room upstairs until we look down the living room from our balcony and see the blanket from our guest room on the floor. Then my mom looks up at me and says, "Stay back." Being that it was my mom, I held her hand and we ended up downstairs in the office room where the windows were wide open. To cut to the end, the man was arrested breaking into another home, and when asked about me, he was ready to kidnap me, etc., and was watching me. The neighbors called 911 because they saw him trying to get into our gated backyard. My mom saved my life a few hours before. I don't know what would have happened. Early autumn 1996, and I had just returned from a tour of the Falkland Islands with the RAF. Through a sequence of events involving my trade being civilized by the UK Ministry of Defence, I knew in advance that I was being discharged almost as soon as we got back to the UK, despite only serving 2 years. I still lived with my parents, male 20, but they had left the day before on holiday. Important later. I got unpacked, made a couple of calls, and headed straight out to see friends for the evening. We go to a quiz night and all the teams end up swapping papers for marking purposes, school style, except us. Somehow, we've still got our own answers. We proceed to improve our answers as the quizmaster goes through them, and surprise, surprise, we win. The prize is a bottle of white wine. Also important later. None of us touched the stuff and I'm driving anyway, but the whole silly cheating nonsense was funny. End of the night, I drive home and remember the security alarm was still set the way the previous owners had it. You had to go around the back to enter and get the 45-second window to turn off the alarm. The front door would just wake up the neighbors with alarm noise. I head around the back and I am fiddling for my door key in the dark garden when I realize something is up. There is no reflection in the window. It takes me a second to realize there is no window. Not smashed, not just there. I spin around, expecting someone behind me in the dark, but I'm alone. I become acutely aware of my winnings from the quiz night. A nice heavy weight in my hand, and I turn it over in my hand to use it like a club. I spot the window lying in the grass. It's a standard white UPVC, double glazing pane in its frame. So the whole piece that moves when you open the window has been removed. No mess and no damage. The careful placing of the window on the wet grass also means no fingerprints, so I am not reassured by the apparently professional approach. I turn back to the door and consider my next move. The door opens in the utility room, then the kitchen. The alarm panel is in the cupboard at the far end of the kitchen. Simple enough, except entering through the window would not have triggered the alarm. On the other hand, leaving the kitchen to enter the hallway would trip the PIR sensor, so the intruder, having entered via the window, must be in the kitchen where the knives are. I psych myself up, unlock the door and move quickly inside, fully expecting a fight. No one. The alarm is beeping its countdown quietly because I broke the contact when I entered. I head over and switch it off, but I'm still wired and decide I need to be sure that I'm alone in the house. I proceed to enter every room, switching on lights as I go, ready to club somebody with a cheap bottle of Chardonnay. I get to the last room, my parents' bedroom. I open it, light on, and the entire house goes dark. I'm so psyched up for a fight, and all my movie geek brain could think of was, Ripley, they cut the power. Private Hudson, what do you mean they cut the power? How could they cut the power, man? They're animals. The landline phone still worked just from the tiny voltage on the phone line, and the handset was in the bedroom, so I called the police. I waited right where I am. 15 minutes goes by and they arrive. My dad never had all the lights on at once, and I tripped the fuse. It turned out that my dad had the driveway repaved, and it was taking longer than agreed. He made the fatal mistake of saying, "I need you to finish, we're going away tomorrow." Facepalm. It was never proven, but I think the traveler types that did the work saw an opportunity. They apparently removed the window and saw that I had left the spare key right there on the windowsill. A blessing in disguise because they unlocked the door, set off the alarm, and had the neighbor call my uncle. He came round, found no one there, and rescued the house without noticing the missing window. Thanks for listening. Turns out I need that bottle more than the better teams, even if I didn't actually hit anyone with it. My family and I have been hunting the same property in East Texas for over 10 years, and we've had some really creepy encounters with one of the locals. The property we hunt is timber company land. It is way off the beaten path down some dirt roads. No power, no running water, no sewer. There are very few people that live in the area, only a few scattered hunting camps and some locals. Our closest neighbors live in a trailer about a mile away we've come to call the meth house. Now, I'm not sure if there really is any meth using going on there, but it would be hard to believe there isn't. This place has always been odd. There is a trailer sitting in the middle of a pine clearing. The brush is fairly overgrown around the trailer, almost as if the property were abandoned. They have always been broken down cars and other junk strewn throughout the front. Cow skulls and hip bones are attached to a pine tree in the front of the house, going up about 15 to 20 feet. It started out with maybe 10 and over the years has grown to about 20. For a long time, that was the oddest thing about the place. 2017, things started to get weirder. The front yard collection began to grow. A rotted out taxidermy of a wild hog was added to the skull tree. A doll's head was fixed with horns and some kind of gown and mounted on a stick by the side of the dirt road, which we called the Devil Baby. 3 tripods standing about 12 feet high each were erected around the trailer, made out of young pine tree trunks. One day we drove by and noticed that from these tripods hung the spinal column and rib cages of some animals, most likely deer. We originally thought that maybe they were using the tripods to hang and clean deer, but the same bones have hung for over a year, and somebody would usually want to dispose of the leftover carcass because the smell can get overwhelming very quick. So far we had no encounters with the residents and weren't even sure what they looked like. The place was creepy, but they seemed to keep to themselves. Until later in that season, we had 2 separate creepy encounters. The first happened to my good friend. He made a quick day trip with his wife up to the property to fill feeders and ride 4-wheelers. To get to his spot, he has to get on the dirt road and drive right past the meth house. His spot is only a few hundred yards away from the house. While they were doing their thing, they began to hear some strange noises. As he listened closer, he could hear fast, high-pitched gibberish back and forth between two voices. He described it as a lot of yips and yas and yees. They decided to get on the four-wheeler and go investigate. They found two men squatted down. Picture Gollum from Lord of the Rings, besides a large mud puddle in front of the house. They were splashing and bouncing around while furiously and loudly speaking this gibberish. Once they noticed the four-wheeler, they in unison stopped talking, if you can even call it that, and stared like an animal that has been spooked. My buddy took off on the four-wheeler and didn't look back. The second semi-encounter happened to me and my brother. We were up there alone for the weekend and were relaxing by the fire on a pitch-black night after a long day's hunt. We began to hear something strange off in the distance. It was pipe organ music. It wasn't a recording of pipe organ music, but someone actually playing a pipe organ. There were missed notes and sporadic stops and starts. We laughed about how this seems like the setup in a horror movie and tried to ignore it. The music continued on and off for the next couple hours. Then all of a sudden we hear crashing through the brush. This was a very thick brush patch, 10 feet high and 100 feet deep or so. It is between our camp and the direction of the house. This didn't sound like the usual spooked deer, armadillo rooting around, or hogs coming down a trail. It was a crash made by something large and it was close. The rest of the night was quiet. No more organ music and no more noise in the woods. Likely, it was just a local little old lady practicing her organ for Sunday service the next morning, drifting over from another property. Likely, it was some animal that got spooked, crashing through the brush. But we sure were freaked. We make a point not to be up there alone overnight, and we keep a close eye on the house. About 10 years ago, I used to live in a tiny town. It had a really small population, maybe 3,000 people maximum. Everybody knew who everyone was, or almost. At 16 to 17, the owner of our local bar would let me get in. He knew who I was because I saw him often where I worked and didn't care that I was underage. It would have been a matter of months until I could go in legally anyway. Canada. So one night I go out with my sister, who is 22, and her friends. I noticed a guy around 40 looking at me from afar. My sister tells me he used to be her history teacher, Mr. Tony. He quit the year he was supposed to teach me, so he was never mine. I figured he was staring at me because he wanted to know if I was one of his old students or whatever. He never talked to me. My sister, her friends, and I enjoyed our night out. Once I got home from the bar, I saw that I had a friend request on Facebook from the teacher. I accept without any second thoughts. I couldn't guess this guy could be a weirdo. Mr. Tony starts talking to me, asking what I do, where I work, and if I'm from out of town since he's never seen me. I tell him no, but he's never met me because he left the school the year that I would have been in his class. It wasn't an okay talk, but still weird because I was talking to an older guy at 2 a.m. There was no flirting at all. He then says he has something weird to tell me. You know, the night before this one, I had a dream. There was one of my Native American friends giving me a feather in my hand saying, "Set her free." When I saw you tonight and saw your feather tattoo on your arm, I knew it was meant to be. Do you want to come over sometime and drink some wine? The first thing I did was tell him right away I was underage and that I was sorry that me being out at a bar misled him. I thanked him for his offer but declined, of course. He tried to still chat, but I was exhausted and extremely creeped out. For a few days following that night, he still tried to talk to me, but I never answered. One day, he wrote me that he came into my workplace and didn't see me and was disappointed because he hoped he would see me. I didn't answer and I blocked him. A few months after that, there was a big event at a local beach for Canada Day. It was open for people of every age, so I went with my friend. We were sitting at a table behind a canteen, and there was nobody around us. I noticed Mr. Tony with another dude walking in our direction. He was clearly drunk and really excited about seeing me. His friend starts talking to the girl I was with, and Mr. Tony does the same with me. I tell him right away to leave me alone and start to walk away from the table that I was at. As I began walking, I turned around and saw that he was following me, but my friend hadn't noticed I was going away. I start walking back to her when he stops me. I was blocked by him. Behind me was the canteen. He asked me to kiss him. I told him no, and he asked again. I screamed at him something about being a pedophile since I was still only 17. At this point, my back was literally leaning on the canteen wall, and he was uncomfortably too close to me. He took his hands, put them on my shoulders, and said, "It's not pedophilia if you consent." I got really mad and disgusted, pushed him and ran to my friend, who was finally starting to realize that something was wrong. We ran away and lost Mr. Tony and his friend out of sight. We called my friend's mom to pick us up and told her what happened. She got to the beach as fast as she could a few minutes later. As I was about to get in the car, I saw him coming towards me saying he still wanted to chat. I told him to screw off. I never saw him after that and almost forgot about this story. Luckily, he never worked again in a school. I was 14 at the time of the incident. I was home with my brother, grandma, and my baby cousin. My brother had invited some girl over. Please remember that part because it is key to the story. My brother then introduced us to the girl. She looked normal but seemed a bit nervous. My grandma asked her some questions and told her if she and my brother needed anything to let her know. Anyways, my grandma told me to stay upstairs and allow my brother and the girl the privacy downstairs. Of course, me being the nosy little sister, I wanted to know everything, especially about the new girl my brother brought home. I snuck down the hall quietly and looked over the banister. I saw the girl looking outside the backyard and asking my brother questions like, "Who all lives here? Is this your guys' house? It's so nice." Hearing the conversation, I decided to listen to my grandma and go back in my room. I began to listen to music and felt the urge to look outside my window. I then saw a 2000 Chevrolet Impala parked outside our driveway. The door was wide open and it appeared to be a man leaving our home with all of our tech items from our home and packing them inside the car. The feeling of dread came. "Yo, what's going on?" I said. Then the sound of loud talking was heard downstairs and my brother said, "Please, you don't have to do this. Just let us leave if you know what's best." The girl responded. I hurried and ran to my grandma as quietly as I could to let her know what I saw downstairs and what I heard. She didn't understand the severity of what I was telling her and began to laugh, which made me kind of upset because our life could be in danger. I heard tires screech and saw the Chevrolet Impala speed down the street. I called out to my brother and he said, "Huh?" in a distraught voice. "What's going on? Who is that man outside?" I asked. He didn't reply. I walked downstairs and saw my brother shaking his head in disbelief, looking at where our TV used to be. The police came shortly due to my grandma calling them. We were later informed that my brother and the girl met for the first time that day off a dating app. And of course, they met at our home. The girl of course set up the entire robbery. She was just the decoy until her boyfriend came to rob us. But this part I'm about to say makes my blood run cold. The guy who robbed us held my brother at knife point and said if he didn't comply, he would stab all of us upstairs as a punishment for him getting in the way. The cops asked my brother to give them a description, but he didn't. Later on the same day, we then heard a truck park on the side of the house. Whoever was in it yelled and threw a glass bottle down and drove off. I'm not sure if it was the same man who robbed us, but it terrified me nevertheless. I'm grateful nothing happened to my brother though, or my family. It goes to show you that you can't trust everyone. So I live in a small town in western North Carolina and have my whole life. I worked at one of the two Bojangles in town. If you don't know what that is, imagine KFC or Popeyes, but the food sucks and there are fewer options. We serve mainly chicken, biscuits, and sides like mashed potatoes and green beans. It's really nothing special. I had worked there for almost 2 years, not despite the horrible pay, because I work with some amazing people and I love going there every day. All of this started about 2 weeks ago. We have a few regular customers who come in every day or on the same day once a week. They usually order the same thing every time and really only come in for the conversation. While we have amazing interactions with our regulars and some of our random customers, creepy encounters are not rare by any means. We have some pretty creepy people come in, usually people who are on drugs or with mental problems. We usually just tell them if they continue doing so, we'll call the police if they're being creepy. And they either stop or leave. However, the day that the man in the purple jacket, as we called him, came into the store, it was a very uncommon experience. He had never come in and ordered anything when I was working, but he did come in and order food from one of the other cashiers on the days I was off. Later on, it came to light that he had come in numerous times, sometimes every day for weeks at a time, and asked when I would be working again, and had called multiple times to ask if I was there and got quite angry when he was told I wasn't. That day, we had seen him walk by the store or stand outside for a couple of days, smoking what we thought was cigarettes. Turned out, he was actually smoking joints outside the store, so my manager went out and told him to stop. He told her that he smokes because he has severe PTSD and depression and it keeps him calm, and she sighed and told him to at least walk behind our dumpsters and smoke there, but to clean up after himself. Then he came back in grumbling and complaining. A few minutes later, he pulled out his phone and pointed it out the window like he was taking pictures. I finished with the customer I was helping and went in the back to tell my manager that I was pretty sure he was either taking pictures or recording a video. By the time we got back up front, he was gone. A couple hours later, I was in the back around 9:30 washing dishes while my manager was doing her closing stuff so we could get out of there early. My boyfriend was sitting outside in his truck waiting on me to come out when we closed at 10. I heard the front door open and close, and knowing I was the only one who could use the register, I walked up front. I plastered a bright smile on my tired face and walked to the register. The man in the purple jacket was standing there wide-eyed, tucking half of an actual cigarette behind his ear. Now that I saw him up close, he wasn't bad looking. He wore black ripped skinny jeans with chains hanging from the belt loops and a pair of red Converse. Under his fluffy purple windbreaker, he wore a dark gray and white polo shirt, with a small chain hanging around his neck with a cross dangling from it. Ironic, I know. He had on a gray toboggan and had one AirPod in his ear, which had a diamond earring in it. He also had bright green eyes and eyelashes that could probably blow you away if he blinked fast enough. I stared at him in shock for just a moment before returning the smile to my face. I hadn't expected him to look like that up close from the way he looked out the window and how creepy my boss had said he was. I shook the thought out of my head and spoke. "Hey there, welcome to Bojangles. What can I get for you?" I spouted out my normal line for when new customers came in and waited for him to tell me what he wanted. Instead, he just stood there staring at me wide-eyed with a wide smile on his face. He stepped closer to the counter and slid his hand into his pocket, which made my heart jump into my throat. Was I about to get robbed? I stepped back just a bit, my heart pounding, and I watched his hand carefully. He finally spoke, and his voice shocked me with how deep and gravelly it was. It sounded like he had been gargling broken glass when he looked into my eyes and muttered, "You're even more beautiful up close. I've been so far away for so long, but now I'm finally face to face with you." And then he laughed and pulled a small envelope out of his pocket and placed it on the counter. Then, with one final glance down at my body and a small giggle, he left. My knees almost instantly got weak and I collapsed on the floor in a mess of tears. At the same time, my boss came up and asked me what happened. I was such a mess I couldn't even talk, so I just pointed at the envelope on the counter. My manager grabbed it and opened it up, dumping the contents out on the counter in front of us both. When I saw what was dumped out on the counter, my breath caught and I felt like I was actually going to pass out. On the counter in front of me were a small ring with a sapphire heart in the center and two small diamonds on either side, a butterfly necklace, a pair of gray underwear, and a black headband, sweet watermelon chapstick, and a light pink bubblegum scented lip gloss. You probably think that these are just random objects, until I tell you that these things have gone missing out of mine and my boyfriend's apartment over the past 2 weeks. Along with the stolen items, there was also a letter. It was short and absolutely terrifying. "Your pillow smells like the ocean and your blankets smell like coconut. Did you know you talk in your sleep?" After that, my boss went out and got my boyfriend, and he helped me to the truck and we went to my mom's for the night. The next morning, my boyfriend went out and got our clothes and shoes and essentials, and we stayed with a friend until we could find a new apartment. I quit my job and went and worked with my mom in the next town over. Everything seemed to be okay until we went to go get our furniture to move to our new place. When we walked in, we were met by our furniture being completely destroyed. Our dishes were smashed on the floor and our couch cushions were cut open and the stuffing was thrown everywhere. There was writing on the wall, the same words over and over again. "I miss your skin." We left all of our stuff there except the air mattress we had in the back of our closet and turned in the key. Since then, we have got 3 dogs to keep us safe. Every time our dogs bark, I feel like I'm going to have a heart attack. Thinking he's come back, all of our windows have blinds that are never opened, and our bed sits completely on the ground. I never go anywhere alone, and I haven't been back to my old work since that night. He was arrested 2 days ago for trying to break into Bojangles at 4 a.m. when nobody was around. He admitted to breaking into our home and stealing my stuff. They found 3 more pairs of my underwear, one of my bras, one of my dresses, my old iPhone full of photos of me, and pictures of me in the shower doing dishes and sleeping next to my boyfriend at night. I went to college in Florida. After graduating, the first thing on my mind was getting out of there, so I made plans to move across the country and start a new life. 23 female at the time with all the options in the world. Everything was in order. I quit my job and a friend of mine agreed to take over my lease. I'd been living alone in a townhouse since my previous roommate graduated, so my friend moved into the other bedroom while I was preparing to move out. About a week later, it was 10 p.m. and the two of us were watching TV when there was a knock at the door. My friend got up to answer. He came back with a bag of food from a sandwich delivery place, assuming I'd ordered it. I hadn't. We thought maybe it had been delivered to the wrong address, but there was my name and address on the receipt. The phone number on the receipt, however, was unfamiliar. I called the number and somebody answered, but they never spoke. I could only hear the ambient sounds of a room and breathing. I searched the phone number and it appeared to be through an app. I convinced myself this was some kind of prank or misunderstanding. A few nights later, another knock at the door. My friend insisted on answering again, and I heard him telling a delivery person that this was a mistake. She doesn't live here anymore. No one ordered food to this address. The driver responded that they had taken the order themselves over the phone and spoken to a man who simply asked for the specials and ordered the first one. It was the same number on the receipt. I called again and again, and I heard somebody listening on the other end. The deliveries kept coming every few nights. My move was delayed for unrelated reasons, and the longer I stayed, the more it began to really scare me. Why would somebody do this? One time I called the number after another delivery, with my friend sitting next to me. The stranger picked up the phone as usual, but this time we heard a faint voice. She definitely still lives there. Then abrupt silence. I didn't recognize the person speaking, but I realized I shouldn't have been calling from my own number. I never called again. My friend tried, but the person on the other end never spoke aside from that one time. Eventually, most of the deliveries stopped, but somebody continued harassing us for months in various ways. That phone number began calling at all hours of the day and night, sometimes 30 calls in a row. They usually called my phone, but called my friend sometimes as well. If we answered, they would immediately hang up and call again. I began getting random friend requests on every social media platform, with messages such as, "Don't you remember meeting at the party last night?" when I definitely hadn't left my house in a week. Most disturbingly, somebody also started throwing eggs at the townhouse, which suggested that the stalker was local and knew where I lived. Maybe he was watching every time a delivery was dropped off. Maybe he was watching other times too. The only thing I ever learned was that he knew I hadn't moved. By this point, I was staying inside as much as possible, but you have to leave the house sometimes. I was terrified until I finally moved and blocked the number. My friend elected not to take over my lease, but I was always thankful he stayed with me those last couple months. This was about 8 years ago now, and I still don't have the faintest idea who it could have been. My former coworkers and a few college friends knew I was moving, but I couldn't think of anybody who would have a reason to keep track of whether or not I'd moved, and I didn't recognize their voice the one time I heard it. To this day, I refuse to answer unknown phone numbers or unexpected knocks at the door. Even contactless delivery gives me anxiety. I am always half expecting them to show up again. I was dog sitting, so when I got home every day around 2:30 p.m., I would take her out for a fairly long walk. I do think it is important to note that we took the same route at the same time every day. Other important notes: it is winter in Canada, so it's really cold, and there were not a large number of people around. Mostly just other people walking their dogs, but also a few people on their way somewhere or walking for exercise or whatever. It was not standing around hanging out outside kind of weather, and she is a small dog who is extremely friendly and would offer zero protection against the attack of two men. We took this walk through the park, which is really just a trail near my house, and while it is kind of isolated for the most part, you are within shouting distance of houses. However, there is an optional section of the path which leads into a more secluded area. Imagine the path as a straight line, and this section is a semicircle that connects it to Both ends. Quite literally a detour. And while I am naturally anxious and paranoid person, the dog really enjoyed this part of the walk. I'm assuming because she could smell animals or wildlife. Probably rabbits and deer mostly, and also it is mostly taken by people with dogs. And you know how much dogs love to mark their territory, over places other dogs before them have done. One day, while we were walking this section of the path, a man in a very distinctive blue jacket appears, and while he gives me bad vibes, there is no interaction between us, and he is headed in the opposite direction, so it is fairly unremarkable. I have never seen this man before. The very next day, while we were headed to that area of the path, another man in a silver jacket passes us, but is also moving slower than normal. Because I have a dog, we stop every few feet to investigate and are not moving at a regular walking pace. However, this man stays close enough that he remains in my line of sight till he arrives at the bridge. The bridge is pretty much at the entrance to this detour. At the bridge, he stops and is just kind of waiting there. I think he was also on his phone, though I'm not sure. This man also gives me that awful gut feeling, but I am assuming that he is just waiting for someone and trying to not be worried about it. Weirdly, as we approach the bridge, he turns and starts walking back towards us. I'm feeling creeped the heck out now, and also dealing with some nausea issues unrelated to this, so we don't take the detour that day because I just want to be lying down at home as soon as possible. As we continue on, I glance back, and the man in the silver jacket is back on the bridge waiting, so I don't really know what the whole seeming like he was going to head back as we went across the bridge was about, but whatever. As we are continuing on our way, we run into that man in the blue jacket again. I've never seen this guy before. Now here he is 2 days in a row at the same time. He was looking at us and using his phone while walking. Anyways, we just keep moving and he is headed towards the man on the bridge. This pretty much concludes the first interaction with these men. And really, it's easy to explain it all away as me being overly paranoid and them being normal people, not out looking to hurt or assault anyone. I continue to walk the dog at the same time every day. However, we now always skip the detour just to make me feel better, and we do not see the man in the blue coat again. But a week later or so, maybe longer, I am not good with time, but at least several days, the dog and I are on our usual walk. As we approach the bridge, who should appear but the man in the silver jacket? Again, just kind of waiting by the bridge. He appears from off the side of the path, and quite frankly, I straight up turn around and head back the way we came. Shortly before the bridge, the path has an offshoot that leads up behind my house, and so we head that way instead. This is probably fairly obvious to the man in the silver jacket, as we had passed that offshoot, and when we see him, we straight up just turn around. This day the weather was objectively not good. It was really cold and also snowing, so there were even fewer people around than is typical, and I wasn't willing to risk it. I firmly live by the motto, you only have to be wrong once to end up dead, and as such, I have no problems saying screw politeness, which has maybe saved my hide a few times, or I could simply be overly paranoid. It is 2016 and I'm attending college out of state in a small town. I knew nobody there, but over time made some connections. One connection was my dorm roommate, named Tori. Bless her, but she did not help me out at all in this situation. As a matter of fact, she actually made things much worse. She aided and enabled my stalker even. Maybe because she grew up in a small town where everybody trusts everybody so easily, and it's why she did not find the situation so odd at first. I wanted to mention this girl first because she played a big role in my stalking situation. I had been living with Tori for about a week and she seemed nice and decent. She suggested that we go and grab an early dinner together somewhere off campus because, well, the on-campus food is, to say the least, not great. About a 15-minute walk away is a fast food joint that we both agreed on, so we headed out that way. Right next to campus is a small liquor store and bar that we have to pass. It is quite seedy, but passing it during the daytime is no big deal for us. As we were passing the liquor store, I noticed a car that passed us slammed on their brakes and do a damn near 3-point turn in the middle of the very dead street. This car then whips around and into the parking lot for the store, nearly taking out Tori, who was a foot or two ahead of me. We keep walking, deciding that two small females confronting a possibly inebriated person would not be the best idea. As we are walking though, I noticed the driver quickly get out and swiftly follow and step right alongside us. It was a man in his 60s who we'll call Brian. "Hey there, where are you little ladies off to?" We were headed to XYZ to grab food," Tori said. "Oh, cool. That's radical. By the way, my name is Brian. What is yours?" At this point in time, I was getting that pit in my stomach type of feeling. That instinctual something is not right here feeling. I've met some odd people in my life, but I never got that intense fight or flight feeling with them like I did with this guy. When he is talking, he is only looking at me, though my roommate is the one responding to him. "My name is Tori, and this is my roommate." "Oh, nice to meet you guys. Do you guys go to XYZ College? I used to work there as a professor. I'm guessing you guys live in the dorms?" Stupidly, she said yes and tells this nut job our damn dorm, which is all female by the way, that we were staying at. "Ah, yes. XYZ dorm. You know the nickname I gave that dorm that people still use to this day. The 4 floors of horrors." Brian and he proceeded to laugh like it was the greatest thing ever. I am now giving her looks of stop talking and let's go, because it is starting to get dark and I'm getting the straight up heebie-jeebies from this man, even though he is asking simple questions. I thought she was finally getting the hint by my looks and was trying to end the discussion with him. He though was not getting the hint and kept tailing us. He kept talking about how he is a big somebody and that he knows all these famous people and that we should be friends with him to get access to said famous people. He keeps trying to get personal information from us, ages, where we are from, and if we have boyfriends and social media. This is where my dislike for Tori comes into play. She answers the questions for herself and then proceeds to answer for me. "Yeah, I'm 18 and I'm from XYZ town and I have a boyfriend. She's 19 and is from this state and is new here, and she's also single." I kid you not, she said this. I gave this hoe of a roommate the foulest look I could muster. Like, okay, give him your information, but where on earth do you think it is okay to answer for me? Brian then proceeds to ask us to get into his car. Literally, he says, "So yeah, just get in my car and I'll take you wherever you need to go. Maybe after I can take you to my place and show you all the autographs from all the famous people I told you about." Before my roommate can finish the sentence of, "Oh yeah, that would be nice," I finally speak up and cut her off right away. "Thanks, but no thanks. It's not a far walk. Let's go, Tori." No, it's fine. Just get in the car. It's a really quick drive and a quick stop by the house. Just get in." Brian is now being more aggressive and panicking a little bit. You can tell by his tone. I just give him the go F yourself sort of look. "Before you go, can I get a hug?" he asks, to which she obliges and gives him one. "What about you? Do I get a hug from my exotic out-of-state gal too?" With his arms wide open and walking right at me, I sidestep this fool and walk fast away with Tori in my wake. I did not turn around or look back even when I heard him shouting, Rude." She was fuming and kept on stating that I was cold-hearted for leaving him hanging like that. Looking back at everything that happened, I don't know why I did not call the cops or campus security. But at the time, I did think it would be a bit extreme. I wish I did speak up more though, so I do regret that. The whole first encounter took maybe 5 minutes, max. Days following this incident, my roommate became Facebook friends with this man. He sent me a request, which I denied, of course. He was able to send me messages still until I blocked him. His responses were the typical, "Hey, what's up? Why won't you respond? And why are you ignoring me? Fine, be a jerk." Which he all sent right after the denied friend request. Tori and Brian talked a lot, but only about one topic, me. I did not find out until later that the conversations were really only about me. Earlier, I noticed when they texted or talked on the phone, she would seem frustrated, but I didn't want to pry and ask what was up. This all went on for a week or two. During this time, she would tell me to friend request Brian on Facebook because he was so distraught that I didn't friend him and because he would like to take me to dinner. He soon began begging and crying and asked my roommate to hand her a phone over to me so he could talk to me. I could hear him repeatedly saying, "Where is she? Where is she?" I told her to respond that I was in class. About 2 to 3 weeks pass and I hear nothing from her about him until she announces that he is on campus looking for me. She did not use the word us. She said specifically, "Brian is here on campus looking for you. He keeps asking me what your class schedule is and what building they are in so he can surprise you." Yes, you read that right. I immediately froze. You did not tell him my class schedule, right? I said. Oh no, I didn't, don't worry, but he's been asking me this since we first met him, and he's been showing up on campus since then. You honestly should be nicer to him. He seems like a decent guy. I mean, yeah, he talks about you a lot, but it's no big deal, she said. I asked her what exactly they talked about that dealt with me, and it was everything. Literally every little detail that she could find about me on social media. She would run off and tell him. My likes, dislikes. She found on Facebook my past relationships, which she told him about, and he got weirdly irate about, like, how dare I not be some pristine virgin that never dated before. Giving him information about my family from social media, my body type, and anything that I mentioned to her about myself. She told me that was all he wanted to talk about, and that if she brought up another subject, he would turn it down and want to talk only about me. And the thing is, she did not see an issue with this. She thought it was cute and funny and that he was a nice older man, that he could not possibly be up to anything weird. I want to tell her off so bad, but that will not do anything to help my current situation. I do not mention that I would go to campus security and notify them about this man that keeps showing up, trying to find me and follow me, and tell them the conversations the man had with Tori. I showed them his profile of what he looked like and said that he apparently was at one time a professor, which he never was, it turns out, because I found out later he was a janitor but got fired for harassment. I come back later to my dorm to find my roommate seething at me. She says that Brian messaged her, saying that campus police found him walking around campus and looking in windows, and that they asked him to leave the premises. She asked if I told security, and I responded yes. But I also mentioned that security probably got red flags from other people who saw some random older man looking into the dorm windows, class windows, just loitering outside of classrooms in general. She was livid and said that I ruined her trust and his, because now he was mad at her for telling me he was on campus, because it was surprise and that they could not be friends anymore. I wish I had asked for the screenshots prior to going to the campus police, just in case anything more happened, but it was pointless now with her being mad and against me. She did not talk to me for a bit, which I didn't really care about. I was prompted by others to move out and get a new roommate, but instead I just stayed with a good friend of mine in another dorm building. I did not see her or hear from this guy again. I moved out of the dormitory and I shared and did not see her much after that. So I grew up in the Republic of Ireland in a small town. The typical town where everybody knew each other. Super friendly, perceived to be safe. My town is near the border to Northern Ireland, which is important to the story later. For anybody with unfamiliar regarding the history of Ireland, the North is still under British rule and classed as the UK. My neighbor, I'll call her Michelle, and I were friends, and we loved going to our local community center to swim. This one Sunday, when I was about 8 and Michelle was 9, we were allowed to walk there and back by ourselves. It was no more than a 10-minute straight walk in a populated area. Cars and people. Anyways, we got there grandly. We had a great time swimming, and then we had the idiotic idea to walk further down into the town before we took ourselves home. This again was a near enough straight road, about an extra 5-minute walk. We went to town fine, and we bought ourselves Mr. Freeze ice pops, 10 pence apiece, and we strolled around the tiny town center. I remember Michelle suggesting that we go to the pet store that was a bit of a mission away. Safe, of course, for a shortcut. The shortcut was behind the building works of a brand new shopping center being built in the town center. So, on we walked to the building site when out of nowhere this grown man approached us carrying what I can only now in my adult head describe as vaginal speculums. Honestly, that's exactly how I remember it. One in each hand, and he said, "Girls, come here. Do you know what these are?" He had a full-on Northern Irish accent. It definitely wasn't local to our own, and immediately I was scared. I recall Michelle and I both saying no and stepping backwards to get away back onto Main Street. He continued to move toward us, and then suddenly out of nowhere, this small 2-door blue car drove towards us with 2 women in it. The man fled. The lady said, "Girls, is that man hassling you?" I don't think we even spoke, and they said, "Hop in the car and we'll drive you girls home." I, of course, being the idiot that I am, went to get in. Thankfully for Michelle, she said, "No, we're fine. Our moms are around the corner." The women said, "Okay, As long as you're sure, and they left swiftly. I started crying to Michelle, basically saying, why did you do that? What if he comes after us on our walk home? But I will never forget her saying, are you stupid? Those women had Northern Irish accents too. This is a story I come back to every so often throughout the years, and I always wonder what would have happened had we gotten to the car. Were they all in it together, or were we going to be trafficked through Northern Ireland into England? Were they just nice women trying to help? How could they have seen our interaction, though? It always creeps me out and messes with my head. When I was a teenager, about 14 to 16, I was in 9th grade and finally had a cell phone. One of those free Verizon phones that you had to wait until after 9 for free calls. I started dating a fellow freshman, but I was a young male teen, so I had other interests. I started receiving messages from a number I didn't recognize, but it was a local number, as the area code was 804 like mine. As the number texted me and let me know who they were, I thought maybe one of my friends was pranking me. It wasn't in their character to do such things. Our pranks were dumb like farts and nut taps. Even then we barely pranked each other. The person texting me said their name was Aquaria. She sent a picture too. She wasn't the prettiest, but she was easy on the eyes, so I figured I'd entertain the conversation. She clearly knew my name and some other things like where I went to school and my age. I didn't think anything of it because school can be a place where your information is passed around like a piece of paper. Now here's where it got weird. This girl claimed that she wanted to be my girlfriend and that the girl I was dating wasn't right for me, and that she was the one. I had already had one stalker during my school days, but it was slightly more annoying than serious, so I thought it was her. But some things didn't add up to make me truly believe it was her. Over the next couple of months, the text died out as I stopped responding because it started to feel creepy. One day I was walking the railway tracks and I got a message from the same girl again from a different number saying they saw me walking on the tracks. Now I'm starting to worry that somebody is keeping a close eye on me. The messages stop as soon as they start. Enter the MySpace days where this girl sends me a friend request and messages me about wanting to date again. She never told where she went to school, or how old she was or anything other than her name. Still feeling weirded out, I decided to stop responding until my 10th grade year. I started receiving messages through text again at all times of the day and night. I didn't respond. And soon, the text stopped until 11th grade, and I'm dating another girl I started dating the summer before, and this time things got extra weird. She messaged my girlfriend and told her that she and I were dating, and she was leaving messages on my page so people could see, and they got disturbing. She was planning out her whole life. My girlfriend called me upset thinking I was cheating, but I told her the situation and I don't think she believed me, but she left it alone after I made some calls trying to prove I had a stalker, which kind of worked out. After that, I deleted her off my profile and managed to make it through a senior year without a single text. And to this day, I have no idea who Aquaria is. She knew too much about me. Like way too much. Where I hung out, my age, my name, the school I went to. It was almost as if she were lurking in the shadows watching my every move. Last night, my roommate and I made a last-minute decision to go night swimming at the river in our city. It was around 8 p.m., so there were still a few people hanging out in the area, but it was quite dark. About 15 minutes after we got there, I saw a man shining his flashlight, seemingly looking for something near where we put our stuff. I said, "Hey, keep an eye on that guy," to my roommate semi-loudly, and he obviously heard us and scurried away. I began to feel anxious, but I waited a little bit to say something to my roommate. Eventually I did, and we decided to leave. We packed our stuff up and began to walk up the staircase that leads to the parking lot, using our flashlights to see the steps, when I, out of the corner of my eye, saw a dark shadow dodge into some bushes at the top. I stopped and grabbed my roommate's arm and said, nope, and started walking back down the stairs. I told my roommate what I saw when we got to the bottom, and she said it was probably just a tree blowing in the wind. I started getting the strangest feeling in my stomach that I'd never had before, and I just knew that if we went up the stairs, something bad was going to happen. I stood at the bottom and began to shine my light up to the top, trying to see if I could see anyone, and sure enough, I saw the outline of a man for a split second. As soon as the light hit him, he ducked behind the bushes again. Obviously, I went into full-blown panic mode and started looking for other people that were there, hoping somebody could walk us to our car. Luckily, we found a couple not far from the steps, and they walked us to our car but seemed quite annoyed about it. When we got to the top of the steps, he was nowhere to be seen. A few hours after we got home, I got a notification on my neighbor's app, the Ring doorbell app that sends crime alerts for your area, that somebody was stabbed only a few streets away from where we were. I'm 100% certain that this guy's intentions were bad. I don't know if he was planning on kidnapping us or robbing us, but I just know something really bad would have happened if I hadn't been paying attention yet. We would have walked up those stairs. And I'm not sure if he was the person that stabbed someone, but that notification just scared me even more. I still feel sick to my stomach because of all of it. For reference, I live in the UK. As I write this, it is currently 3:30 a.m. and what I have just witnessed occurred between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. I live across the street from an elderly couple. I'd guess around 75 years old. They seem pretty normal from the outside, although I've never spoken to them. I usually see that their lights are out by the time I move to the bedroom to lay in bed for the night and not really sleep. Tonight I was lying in bed as usual watching YouTube videos on my phone when I heard what I'd guessed was the slamming of the boot of a car across the street. I saw the old lady getting into her car and driving away. This in itself seemed odd since it was usually the old man that would drive, and all the lights in the house had been left on. I decided to forget about it since she might have had some sort of emergency. I heard her drive back into the driveway around an hour later as she seemed to speed into it. She appeared to be in a hurry as she was pacing around the car fairly quickly until she disappeared into the house for a couple of minutes. When she returned, she was carrying a stepladder and some hand wipes. She placed the stepladder into the boot of the car and proceeded to use the wipes to wipe down all the windowsills on the front of the house, and once again sped off down the road. All of the lights in the house were still left on. I've been peering out the window for about 20 minutes now with no sign of movement in the house, which makes me wonder where the old man could be. I definitely recall seeing him earlier today as he usually waters the front garden every evening. I don't know if I'm interpreting this wrong, but something about this just doesn't seem right. If anybody could offer some sort of explanation of this behavior, it'd really help clear my head. I'll update this post if she comes back. Update, 10:46 a.m. August 12th. I stayed up until just after 5 a.m. to see whether she'd come back or not, but nothing more happened up to that point. I have now woken up to see that her car is back, along with their other car that I couldn't see last night. They have a rounded driveway which isn't completely visible from the window. I assume the other car was behind the bushes. It's completely possible the old man had driven somewhere that night and she had driven to join him. I agreed that the explained behavior does seem like dementia. It is the most likely reasoning. For both cars to be now visible, I assume they are both in the house, and I will keep an eye on the house today for any sign of the old man. Update August 12th, 9:38 p.m. I was out during the day today, and when I returned, neither car was in the driveway once again, with what seemed like a note stuck upon the porch window. I didn't want to walk up to the door in case somebody was in. I was heading out again for the evening, but as I was pulling out of the driveway, they both returned in the same car the old lady had been driving the night before, with the old man driving like he usually does. It's possible the other car had been kept in the garage the last night, as that's where I suspect it is now. I will keep a lookout for any funny business tonight. This happened about a month ago, and it's really been bugging me since. This will be long, so read at your own risk. Setting up the scene is important in my opinion. So, my family has a cabin that we've had since the 60s, and I've been going out there for my entire life, throughout the years though especially. It's nestled in a little town of less than 2,000 and surrounded by vast forests and farmland. You see cows everywhere and stray dogs who will let you pet them. You will see maybe 30 people in a day if you go in the little town of shops and small mom-and-pop restaurants. Definitely a small country town. Since I've been going here my entire life, I pretty much know everybody, or my family knows everyone. Men dress in Western clothes with big jeans and old flannel shirts, and belts with big-ass buckles. Women dress in jeans and tank tops with country factory logos on them. They're all nice enough but keep to themselves. So I'm driving up there one night to meet my parents, since they had gone down the night previously to open the cabin for spring. My boyfriend had also flown in so he could meet my family, who lived up there. I had been driving until it got dark, about a 2-hour and 10-minute drive from my house, and he had taken over driving around 10 p.m. There's also a little national park close by, about 15 miles in total of land, and since I had fallen asleep and couldn't give directions, he decided to log the address into the GPS. It took him through the back way through the park that I never drive through, so when he woke me up to ask where to turn since the GPS said he could go either way, it took me a minute to figure out where the heck we were. There were no lights anywhere, and we were the only car for those 15 miles. Long forests with tall giant trees on either side of the road, with a lonely deer or two in the woods to keep us company. I mentioned switching drivers because I remember that road, the entrance to the park, would lead directly to the intersection that would go through a small community up to the mountain my cabin was on. But it was prime leave a toy baby on the side of the road and kidnap somebody when they check it out territory. It was dark enough and the forest was thick enough that we joked some cult members could be hiding out here. Heck, maybe they were. Needless to say, we decided stopping wasn't a great idea. We eventually passed through a small clearing and intersection, not the one we wanted, with a dinky concrete building on the side of the road with one light on, and a car pulled into the slanted gravel ground. My boyfriend drives forward and we see 2 people there. My gut immediately twisted and I started to feel sick. Sick enough to feel ice cold run through my veins and need a hand on my stomach. You never see people at night here. It was 2 kids, teen boys in fact, probably around 15. They were wearing city clothes, Nike shorts, and obnoxiously colored sports workout clothing and looked very out of place. They saw us coming and walked away from what looked like to be an old beat-up El Camino, probably a 1965. It's important to note that the paint was completely gone and it had a light brown dirt or rust covering the body. They waved and smiled at us, and that was what freaked me out the most. I didn't have a damn clue who these people were, and I knew a gas station that was right up the road. They could just walk there. I could see it past the road and overhead bridge. That building was also abandoned, so how was there a light on the wall? They walked out onto the road, almost blocking us from going forward, and my boyfriend had to slow down to not hit them as they continuously waved their arms and smiled at us, maybe saying something but I couldn't hear. I remember mine and my boyfriend's conversation going something like this. "Should we stop?" he asked, looking nervously at me with a hand on the gear shift. "No, absolutely not. Just keep driving," I said, clenching the door handle and double checking it to be locked. "But babe, could they be in trouble?" "I don't care, I don't know them. My gut is telling me that we need to leave. That building is abandoned. It shouldn't have light. And man, their car is abandoned. Just drive, please." He quickly drove around them and slammed on the gas, trying to calm me down since the whole scene scared me in such a specific and bizarre way. Images of getting out of our car as somebody strange got in flew through my head. I looked behind us and they stood in the middle of the road with a cross between an angry look and a calm stare and didn't move from the road until we turned and couldn't see them anymore. Who were those kids? Why were they wearing city clothes? They looked too young to be driving cars even, and I knew for a damn fact that the car they acted like they owned had been there for months. I knew because I remember seeing it last summer when my dad pointed out the model, and I said how I wanted an El Camino someday. We finally made it out and found the intersection we wanted that led to the familiar gas station, and he didn't hesitate when I said I needed to drive next. About 10 or so minutes later we got to my cabin, half-heartedly laughing about it the whole way there. When I told my parents about it, they didn't reprimand us for not stopping. It was almost 12 a.m. by that time, and the night wasn't so bad that those kids would freeze, and they agreed with us the whole situation was so weird. Should I have stopped? Maybe. Can I change what I did? I can't. Did I feel comfortable stopping? Absolutely not. So, 2 teen boys who might have had ulterior motives with passing drivers, please stay away from us. This happened a couple weeks back in the UK. To some this won't be creepy, I guess, but I thought this was the best place to share. I'm a very tall 45-year-old dude on medical disability due to renal failure, weak bones, etc. I wanted to make lunch rather than be lazy and order a pizza, and despite the pain caused by walking, I decided to walk the 30-minute round trip as part of my mandated exercise. I get to the local small store, masked up, and go grab some basics to make a quick meal. While I'm in there, I feel a sharp pain fly up my back, and then my left leg, and I start limping. Knowing that when this happens, I have 20 minutes tops before the pain gets too much, I go and get my stuff paid for. I leave, cross over the street, and sit on a public bench and let my pain fade a little bit. Once it did, I started walking again, only for two young guys in suits to come up to me wearing badges, identifying them as members of the Church of England, asked me if I was okay, and said that letting God into my life would stop the pain. I politely told them I'm fine. I just need to get home before it flares again, and big mistake. Tell them I'm not religious. I believe in what I like, but I don't anymore. I get told it's their job to save me in the Word of God. I start to walk off, but my leg flares up again and I start limping. These two guys follow me and keep trying to stop me, despite me saying to leave me alone, telling me that they need to help me. I get to my house, open the door, and they try to push into it. I stand in the doorway, now in agony, freaking out, and anxiety takes over. My retired neighbor sees them and comes over just as I lose it. I yell at them. This is private property. You are trespassing and making me feel unsafe. Screw off. They look offended, but my neighbor tells them to leave me alone. They storm off grumbling. My neighbor helps me sit and makes my meal and stays with me till I calm down. I called the Church of England and complained about my interaction, got an apology, and was told that the two workers will be retrained and kept out of my area. Not seen them since two different ones who asked how I was and then left me alone otherwise. I, 22 female, live in a brand new apartment complex on a nice side of town. My city is pretty safe in general. This is the first time I've lived alone, so even though it's a safe area, I take some precautions, which, including installing a Ring video doorbell, I have honestly never needed it in the 6 months I've lived here, as no unexpected visitor has ever come by. Until last night, that is. I was sitting at home along with my dog working on some homework. It was nearly 8 p.m. and starting to get dark. At night, I have my Ring set up to alert me when any person is detected outside my door. I received a notification of motion at my door, but I didn't think much of it. At 8 p.m., people are still walking down the hall up the stairs. About 30 seconds later, I received several loud knocks on my door, and my Ring is pushed rapidly 3 times. At this point, I'm spooked and my dog is going nuts. I open up the app to see 2 men standing outside my door. I debated internally on if I should open it or not, but then decided it wasn't quite dark yet and my neighbors were home, that it would be safe to do so. I slowly open the door, just enough to put my head out. The man nearest to me says that they are with the wreath committee, and complimented my wreath. He then went on to say that he was with an internet company and he and his partner were here to offer me a deal. Now, my apartment has a very strict no-tolerance policy or solicitation of any kind. We are actually told to immediately report that kind of activity, and there are signs posted all around stating that solicitation is prohibited by law there. I told the men I am happy with my current service and was not interested in switching. The man who spoke first continued to speak about the great deal they were offering. I continued to decline. He kept saying that he lived really close to here and that he would be happy to personally set up the service. He even offered to come inside and help me get started now. I declined once again, and he reiterated that I should give him a call if I changed my mind because he could be here in 5 minutes to help out. He handed me a business card and I tried to end the conversation again. He then tells me that he just can't walk away knowing I could get such a good deal, and I'm saying no to it. At that point, my instincts were telling me something was horribly wrong. I decided to take a more aggressive approach, and I asked him if he was aware that my apartment has a strict no solicitation policy. He said that he was aware, but that he cleared it with the management. My apartment has a very small management team, and I know every single one of them. I asked who he cleared it with, and he said that he cleared it with the guys on the golf cart, Mike and Will, and that Mike was a great guy. Now I knew it was all a lie. Our management team are only women here. There is nobody by the name of Mike or Will. In fact, only one man works here and his name is Joe. I say thanks, but I'm not interested, and close the door and lock it loudly. I took a closer look at the business card he handed me. It had a logo and the name he gave to me, but the email was not a company email. It was a Yahoo account. The phone number also did not appear when I searched it up for the company. I decided to post about my encounter on the residents only Facebook page. A few other women commented that they had similar interactions tonight, but that they were given different names. The strange thing was none of the men or couples were approached. It was only women who they spoke with. They talked to my upstairs neighbor and my neighbor across the hall, and didn't speak to either of the men that live on the same floor as me. Everybody was given different names, and everyone was also offered vastly different deals. 2 women were told that they didn't have business cards to hand out. I thought it might be worth Googling this guy's name to see if anything popped up. Sure enough, the second result was a report on an offender registry. Turns out the man who spoke at my door has 5 felonies and has served several years in jail for various charges, including trafficking a controlled substance, theft by deception, and possession of stolen property. I knew it was him because there was a photo attached to the report. He is currently on parole until November. I'm not sure if I'm overthinking this situation because this is my first time experiencing something like this, but I know it didn't feel right. Maybe I'm just being dramatic or paranoid, but the entire thing feels more than a little bit off. I'm not sure if they were just scammers or if they were staking out places to rob, or worse. I reported it to my property manager nonetheless, who is investigating it today, but I am just a bit uneasy about the whole thing. If they do return, I'll be calling the police for sure. As of the time of me writing this, nothing else suspicious has happened, and I'm safe at the moment. I'll continue to stay vigilant. Be safe out there, you guys. As I am a Balkan guy living in Austria, the tradition of Krampus is not so new for me. We got similar traditions in Croatia, Serbia, and Bulgaria, Hungary, and most of the other countries on the Balkan Peninsula. But here in Austria, the Krampus shows and parades can get pretty violent. Not as bad as approximately 10 to 15 years ago, but still pretty tough in some nowadays rare cases. So, inspired by the southern neighbors, pyrotechnics are pretty common at Krampus shows and parades. It seems some groups spend more of their time and money on great pyro shows than on their wooden, hand-carved, and all-unique masks. This happened in 2014 on the 2nd of December. In my village, there was a very large Krampus parade. The route, unfortunately, directly crossed my workplace and a restaurant. It was about 8 p.m. and our restaurant was filled with guests, mostly kids with their parents. I was in the office calculating my order for our supplier when I heard children screaming in fear, so I immediately rushed to the bar counter and saw 3 Krampus with horrible masks surrounding 2 small Turkish kids. Well, as a foreigner living in this country, I know that most people in rural areas don't really like foreigners, especially Muslims, unfortunately, and those kids were obviously both. One of the devil's minions, whose mask looked furiously angry, with long teeth and a long tongue sticking out, as well as large Capricorn horns, held the trident with some kind of Bengal fire attached to it, which filled the whole guest room with smoke and a sulfuric smell. I knew this smell very well from the football stadium. He wore thick black fur on his waist, and there was a heavy iron chain worn as a belt. The others had scary masks too, but the one with the Capricorn horns was clearly the scariest, plus the alpha of the group. All Krampus also have large cowbells attached somewhere on their costumes, and for a few years above the eye holes, they have had small red or blue LEDs for a glowing eyes effect. I looked back into the kitchen and called for Demir and Flamer, 2 cooks muscularly built in the same kickboxing club as me, to come and help de-escalate the situation. They nearly instantly showed up through the door, and without explanation, they knew why I called for them. We grouped up at the bar, where 2 female service employees crouched on the floor, made our way around the counter, and approached the scene. Many people, even grown men, just stood beside and watched as the 3 devils surrounded the children, who I later found out was her mother, was standing a few meters behind, shouting and crying at the men with masks. I grabbed the quote-unquote alpha on his shoulder, totally forgetting that I shat my pants when I saw them as a kid, and pulled him back half a meter. My friend Demir grabbed his trident, and my other friend blocked one of his friends, which made the 3rd one back up. The alpha, if you will, started to scream below his heavy mask and used a bunch of swear words at large, and I could smell the alcohol through the holes in the wooden carved base. He tried to push me back, but Demir held his other arm and we pulled him to the exit, where the parade was still passing by. His friends rushed outside on their way and grabbed their alpha and pulled them into the mob of devils that was moving past our restaurant. Well, In Austria, Krampus needs to wear an identification number to minimize the chance of assaults on people, but all three of them had none. While Flamur and Demir went back inside to open all the windows, that freaking smoke burns in your eyes and throat when the fire is used inside a closed room. I went into the parade to find some kind of responsible person or police officer I could talk to. After a few minutes, and with the help of two girls dressed up as angels, they were part of the parade, I found the vice mayor of our village and told them what happened. Unfortunately, many devils had large Capricorn horns, and they were a trend at the moment, and my description fit too many devils that, and as we later found out, the following 2 years. After filing a report, I went back to our restaurant and ended my shift as usual. When I finished, as always, I left as the last one. I went outside and locked the door, lit a cigarette, and walked to my car a few corners away. I thought I heard the faint sound of cowbells in the distance, but I shrugged it off and moved on. On the left side of the street, there are buildings. On the other side, there is a field bordering a forest. I moved on to my car when I heard the sound of multiple cowbells not so far away that time. I froze again and concentrated on every sound I could hear. Somewhere near me, a cat hissed and searched through a trash can. At least I assumed that. I could hear a train passing the town and other usual night sounds. When I reached my car and pushed the button on my key, I clearly heard cowbells behind me. Behind me, there was only the dark forest. I stared frozen but could not see anything. I turned and opened my car door when suddenly a loud growl came out from the forest, and I saw 2 dim red lights at the first tree line, then 4, then 6, then 8, now 10. I squinted at the trees to make out some details, and after a few seconds there was no doubt that dark figures with glowing eyes walked out of that thicket into the field. I turned around and hopped into my car, put in the reverse gear and started the engine, rushed backwards onto the street and drove the heck out of there. I've never been home so fast. At least 5 devils stood in the forest trying to scare me. Or wasn't it aimed at me? I'll probably never find out, but after the incident in the restaurant, I doubt that it was coincidentally me they scared. I just need to get this out of my system as it literally just happened. So I female work 2 jobs and I'm currently in a temporary accommodation which unfortunately is notorious for housing drug dealers and ex-convicts. There are endless parties and it wasn't unusual to hear loud banging and people out of their minds screaming at each other. I keep myself to myself, but it still has become part of my everyday life. The police are here every other day. I returned home from my first job as normal today and then headed back out to my second one. As I walked out of my flat building both times to go to work, I noticed police cars and ambulances parked outside. Again, not an unusual sight, but it was the second time as I was leaving that an officer stopped me to ask if I heard anything the night before, and I said yes. There was some music blaring for a while, and then came the banging and shouting all around 1:30 a.m. I told him it sounded nothing out of the ordinary and he let me go. As I arrived at work, my colleagues were all gossiping as usual. I wasn't really acknowledging any of it. Not until just the 2 of us were assigned the job, my colleague explained to me that the guy below me battered his ex to death in a heated, drug-fueled rage, and that was likely what I was hearing last night, as apparently the ambulance was called half an hour later from when I heard all the noise. I am now in bed and there's still police hanging around his flat, but it's so hard to sleep knowing that somebody lost their life below me and that I was awake listening to it the whole time. It's surreal and I felt sick since I found out. I don't know how to process it. Yes, she was constantly going back to her abusive ex and strung out on hard drugs, but nobody deserves something like that happening to them. This tale is 15 years in the making. I work with disabled and vulnerable adults. One time I was grabbing a drink with a friend Joe and he asked if I could work for his girlfriend Jane. Jane and I got on like a house on fire. She had some physical disabilities but also some mental health issues, leading to her being prescribed a raft of antipsychotics. Joe was particularly on top of Jane's meds as he was training to be a mental health nurse. He had me filling in sheets as if I were working in a psych ward at their house rather than a private residence. Usually, I simply make sure the people I work with take their meds. Sometimes, if they're controlled drugs, I might need to fill in a tick box, but he had full-on sheets that I was expected to fill in as a nurse would. Over time, I realized how controlling Joe was and how much he used Jane's mental health against her. Gradually, I realized that if he attended doctor's appointments with her, she would get an increase in meds. If I attended with her, this didn't happen. Joe was getting me stressed out with how useless I was, not putting items back into the cupboards perfectly, or making spelling mistakes, and missing punctuation on the over-the-top med sheets. I didn't notice how quite off balance he was keeping me, but I was very stressed out. So stressed out, I had several episodes of insomnia. One of these episodes, the doctor concluded, led to me hallucinating twice while awake. The doctor gave me sleeping pills and the hallucinations didn't come back. When I saw Joe hit Jane for the first time, I did have the wherewithal to call social services, but Jane claimed it didn't happen. Joe said I'd misunderstood what was going on and that I didn't have any right to interfere in their relationship. The first time Jane left, he claimed I'd had undue influence over her and left me checking words I said in case I was somehow influencing her as a vulnerable person. When Joe pinned me to a wall by my throat because I tried to prevent him from hitting her, I knew that I needed to leave, so I mentally gave Jane until January to leave him, and then I would stop working there. I registered a complaint with Joe's nursing course about his treatment of the vulnerable. She left him before that Christmas. By June, without him influencing her doctors, she had been taken off all the psych meds and hadn't had an episode since she left. Almost as if her stressor wasn't present, her physical disabilities improved significantly as well in the years since she left. That's because of the lack of unnecessary psych meds. I haven't worked for Jane in years as she moved away to marry a lovely bloke. I do work for a young adult who is apprenticing in a workplace, and for his first 6 months, he has me in the breakout area identifying anything a disability charity can provide for his access needs. His colleagues chat away to me on their breaks, including one who is very proud of his daughter, a nurse. The daughter has a colleague who at first used to provide fun tales of a dumbass who came to work hungover naturally. Then the colleague turned up to work on a ward, while drunk or high. Then the colleague boasted about keeping an ex-girlfriend's interfering friend quiet by feeding her the girlfriend's drugs so she didn't call social services on him. The daughter has made a complaint. Then I got to see a photo of this colleague, and of course it was Joe, and I'm stuck here thinking about those times I hallucinated due to insomnia. Or did he put something in my tea? Hi, 28 female here. So this happened a week ago, but it still makes me kind of eek when I think about it. Okay, so last Friday after I knocked off of work, I went home and my brother, also 28, who I live with, texted me and asked if I wanted to meet with him and some friends at one of the nearby bars. I got there and went over to the bar to get a drink. My brother came and basically just pointed out to me where the table they were sitting at was. It was busy and there were only 2 bartenders working, so it was taking a minute. Sitting next to me at the bar was a dude. He was probably in his early to mid-30s. He was fairly clean cut, average height, average body type. Not attractive to me, but also not unattractive, just not my type. He initiated some small talk with me, which was fine, but things moved pretty fast. And when it started moving that fast, it got inappropriate. So he told me right off the bat, "You look like a vodka and tonic type girl." I told him no, that I was ordering a Jack and Coke. He rolled his eyes in an overly sarcastic kind of way and smiled, almost like he was trying to be intentionally charming, which wasn't working. He asked for my name, which my brother had previously called out, so lying seemed pointless. He introduced himself. For the sake of this story, I'll call him Jack. Jack made a few comments, mostly about how he thought I was pretty and asked what I did for a living. Told him I'm a nurse. He said it was sexy, which to me was a little over the line for someone to just blurt out. I was finally able to order my drink, but I still had to wait. Jack told me that my boyfriend looked too ugly to be with me and suggested that I needed to be with a real man. He was referring to my twin brother. I told him that was very inappropriate and rude to say, but he just chuckled. Then he started showing me his tattoos. I'm completely ignoring him as of now. He lifts up my sleeves to see if I have any, and I pulled my arm away. He then, and I swear I can't make this up, pulls the back of my shirt and looks down and says, "You sure you don't have any?" I slapped his hand away and moved over to the table that my brother and friends were at. As I'm leaving, he asks, "Have you ever been with a woman? Like, is this dude drunk or stupid or horny or what?" When I got to the table, I told my best friend, who I date on and off on occasion, who told my brother also. Both of them went over to confront the guy. Aside from my brother shoving him to get him out of the bar stool, nothing extremely physical happened, but the two did chase him out of the bar. To my surprise, the owner of the bar actually kicked my brother and his friend out for that. That's when the two of them started pitching a fit. We eventually all left and just all went to our apartment. The manager texted my brother the next day and told him that their ban was lifted because the owner didn't know what happened. One of the bartenders also came forward and said that the guy had asked to lick her breasts earlier that evening. I don't know why he wasn't kicked out for that alone. Anyways, I like to have a fun time as much as the next girl, but I'm writing this to urge caution. Not only with women, but with everybody. There are a lot of creeps out there, and a lot of them I hear about in the sub, and I just want to tell everyone it's okay to have a good time, but just be careful out there. I don't know where to post this, but I need advice. It's long, but it's weird as heck, man. A little over a year ago, I was approached via Twitter by a girl claiming she wanted to work together. Her location was not only the same city as mine, but in the same community as well. After a brief convo in DMs, I realized this profile was strange. It was fake. Immediately, I block her and keep it moving. After this, it gets so much weirder. This person continues to make fake profiles, pretending to know me, and eventually went into using fake phone numbers like WhatsApp and texting out to use me. I never gave them my number. It's weird enough that this person is persistent in stalking/harassing me. I'm a freelance entrepreneur. A great portion of my income comes from online, so if it was up to me, I would just unplug, but I can't let this harm my career. But this person has gone onto my friends' numbers/profiles to contact them. I have no idea how. I am very discreet, and I do not interact with these friends online, and somehow this person has been finding them one by one over the past year and persistently harassing them, even making fake Facebook profiles to harass certain people I deal with. Not only my friends in the same area/group, but also friends I have from scattered cities/groups. When I tell you, and this is not an exaggeration, I have blocked over 100 Instagram and Twitter profiles, texting app numbers, and emails from this person. And keep in mind, you need a new email to make an Instagram. I'm a single man, and of course I have lady friends, but none of them are under the impression it is anything different. And I have no bad blood with any ex or former fling. I'm on good terms with everyone as far as I know. But somebody is targeting me and any person they think I date or talk to romantically. It has affected relationships with people I deal with. Either someone I know, I have no idea how close, but they are close enough, secretly hates me and wants to make my life a living nightmare. Or a stranger is obsessed with me and wants to run everyone around me away from me. I have prayed for this man, like honestly just asking God to reveal who this is to me or make it go away. After a year, the persistence is starting to wear me down. I have no idea who this is pressing me. I reported it to the police, but they haven't done much. I even tried to hire a digital private investigator, but the few I've contacted said they can't help me. Can anyone please give me some direction, man? It's sickening. Something has to give. Thanks. This happened when I was around 10. We lived in a small neighborhood in a not so busy street where everybody knows one another. I live in the second house down the street, and since it's a family house, my mom, my dad, and I live on the second floor. In order to get into our part of the house, you had to enter the garden door and pass by the main entrance to the first floor of the house. Go around it and walk up the stairs. You could not see the entrance to our house from the street. You had to walk in the garden, which had a fence around it, and take 2 turns to find the stairs to our doors. That day, my dad was going to work, so it was around 7 a.m. My mom was watching him leave with his car through the bedroom window, and I was sleeping soundly in the bedroom next to that. After a few minutes, my mom heard the door opening and footsteps, but didn't think much of it. She thought maybe my dad had returned because he forgot something. After a minute of silence, she felt something was odd since she wasn't hearing anything, and she turned around looking through the door of the bedroom and saw a stranger who was about to step in the room I was sleeping in. My mom, who was scared shitless, grabbed the chair and closed the door of the bedroom slightly, shielding herself since she was only in a t-shirt and underwear, and started yelling at the man and motioning to him with the chair to get the heck out or she would call the police. At that moment, I was wide awake since a lot of the yelling was happening now, but I just shook it off, thinking it was my parents arguing. My mom finally was able to get the man out of our house, and he was repeating that he just wanted to use the phone since his car broke down, but she didn't give him any time to talk or explain. She quickly locked the door, called my dad to come home, and went into my room to tell me what just happened. My dad came home and searched our garden and basement but found nothing. Later we found out that the same man entered another house before ours, 3 houses down the street, and told the same story of having to use the phone once the woman came out of the shower and saw him in her living room. I don't know what his motive was or if he really needed to use the phone, but entering other people's homes without a knock on the door just seems really, really strange. Thankfully, we didn't ever see the man again. I work with disabled adults. Relevant for this story is that several housebound adults run online shops, and before home pickups were a thing, I used to run to the parcels to the post office. I used the same post office because it was on my route home and would frequently take all of the parcels from the same day at about the same time, so it would just take one trip. This meant I often encountered the same staff. One guy behind the counter started to be friendly in a socially awkward way. I would nod and keep it civil, and answer questions like, "How are you?" with "Fine," and "What are you up to today?" with same old, you know. He started saying, "Hi, Penny," when I came in. My name is not Penny, by the way, but one of my clients used their dead name, Penelope, on their return address, partly for anonymity, since it's not their name either, and I don't bother to correct them. I also don't bother to learn his name, which starts making me feel a bit guilty. One day he asked how I am after a long day. I think my shifts had started at 4 a.m. or something equally early, and I hadn't had lunch. Instead of my usual "fine," I answer with, "I'm exhausted. I started very early and I haven't managed to have lunch yet." He is overly sympathetic and tells me to go grab a chocolate bar on my way out. I thank him and say I can't because I'm on a diet. I'm not, but accepting the chocolate bar seems like a bad plan. He gets very concerned that I'm eating properly. I am a plump woman. This is not a necessary concern, and I end up taking a chocolate bar to stop the over-the-top concern. I don't think much of it. Seemingly unconnected incidents a month or so before Christmas. One of my vulnerable clients asked me for my help as one of their customers is claiming that no orders have come through. I think they're likely trying to scam the vulnerable person and help them send the proofs of postage to the relevant online companies involved. I don't think much of it. In the same fortnight, it seems like all of my clients with online shops have been hit by scammers, as they're all complaining about customers claiming they're not getting parcels. I didn't think much of it. I sent a large letter to a friend for his birthday, and he told me the post is slow and he hasn't gotten it yet when I wished him a happy birthday online. Didn't think much of it. I take parcels into the post office as usual, and a guy behind the counter, who I don't recognize, asks me if I'm Penny. I say no, and he looks at me funny. Then he hands me a card and says that the police really need me to call this number. I smile and take the card to be polite. I have no intention of calling it. Put it on my dashboard and forget about it. The next day, a client cancels on me and I essentially get a long lunch break. I sat in my car eating my sandwiches. I figure I'll kill some time by calling this number. The policewoman asks if I'm Penny. I say no, but explain about my parcel drop-off, maybe causing confusion. She asks if I know anyone called Creepy McCreepyface, and I say no. She gives a description, and I ask if he worked at the post office. Over the course of that conversation, and the one I had later when I went in to talk to her in person, I discovered several things. Creepy had been describing me to his coworkers as his friend Penny, to the extent that some of them thought we might be dating, and one of them worried I might be his ex that he was having trouble getting over. He had taken several parcels that I had dropped off and hidden them either in his locker or under his desk. I'm not clear on that part. These were easily traced to that post office because he'd done this after I'd paid for them to be delivered and got the receipts and proofs of postage that I had helped a client scan for online companies. At first, the police thought he'd done it to several people because there were multiple return addresses. But nope, turns out it was just me. None of the return addresses were mine, and he didn't know my actual name, so I was advised not to get a restraining order because that would give him my actual name and address. He was, however, restricted from the areas of the addresses he did potentially know from the return labels. He was later charged and prosecuted, not for harassment or anything, but with some kind of postal crime, which resulted in him serving time because this wasn't the first time he had done something like this. He's also banned from working for the post office. I spent that Christmas having freakouts whenever I saw someone with a post office uniform at the door. Recently separated male 38, moved back to India and got on the Bumble dating app. Married for 9 years, I was very rusty as far as dating rituals go. Matched with Priya. Female 38. We chatted for a bit. We'd both lived in similar parts of Europe at different times in our lives. We also seemed to have a lot in common. She would talk to me a lot for about 4 to 5 hours a day, with very intricate and disturbing details of what happened in her marriage that didn't last long, to various abusive boyfriends along the way. Alcoholism, abuse, all kinds of stuff. This was all before we even met. The first date, where we met IRL, went spectacularly well. She came and stayed over with me at a swanky place that I had booked. We stayed there for 2 days, seeming to have natural ease in occupying each other's spaces. Every midnight, the landline of the hotel room would ring. The third day, I head back to my city, which is only 80 miles from hers. She calls me over the phone, wanting to know how far the bus ride to my house was, and casually says, "I love you." I was taken aback and didn't think much of it at the time. This was followed in days to come. "I want to be married to you. And I'm yours forever." I again head back to her city a week later. Booked a rather basic place, very close to her place. At 1 a.m. she gets a coffee craving. I call room service to order in, thinking that's what she wants. No, let's walk to this 24-hour coffee shop a mile away. So yeah, the neighborhood, although fairly upscale, had loads of feral stray dogs on the streets, and many drunken men would come our way, pretending to be lost and asking for directions. She seemed to be enjoying it a lot. We have coffee at about 1:30 a.m. She then wants to walk back and takes me to the corner of the road and says, "This is where a date didn't go well once and I was assaulted." My legs were shaking at this point. We start walking further. We pass by a broken clay sculpture. She goes, "I have a strong suspicion that this broken sculpture is possessed. I know all about it. My ex-husband's sisters were into witchcraft." We are back at the hotel. It's about 2:30 a.m. We go to sleep. The landline of the hotel room, rings incessantly. The next morning, she calls a cab and goes back to her place. I don't think I'm ready for a loving relationship yet. I get that text. I head back to my city. I think about this a lot sometimes. It just refuses to leave me. I have disturbing fever dreams about my incidents that she's narrated to me. I am unable to go on dates anymore. It's been 2 months since this has happened, and I just hope I'll recover soon. When I was about 21 years old, I served tables at a pizza chain restaurant at a new shopping center near where I lived in the evenings and weekends. It was a part-time job for me. I was opening staff at this brand new place, and it was very popular at the time. There were several shifts of employees and had a few trainers that came from other locations nearby and stayed to work at the brand new location. One of these cooks' names was John. He was only a couple years older than me. He was a kitchen manager or similar. When I would forget to ring something in or make a mistake and he was working, I'd go back to the kitchen and tell him, and he would often help me or give me extra sauce. Whatever, usually he was doing inventory or paperwork type stuff, like food temp checks, etc. He was really nice to me, never raised his voice or got mad. He was a really soft-spoken, quiet guy. I was engaged at the time and there was no flirting or anything. He was quiet, didn't seem interested in me like that or whatever, just did his job and we would briefly chat when we worked the same schedule. I quit about 4 to 5 months after opening the restaurant and didn't stay in contact with most of the staff, including him. Well, fast forward about a month or two after I quit, and I was reading a news article, and the name in the article was the same name as the guy I'd worked with, and he had starved his stepson to death and kept him in a locked closet. I looked it up and his picture came up, and it was the same guy. I was dumbfounded. He had gotten custody of his ex-girlfriend's child who had no blood relation to him, although there was another younger boy in the home who was John's biological child, I believe a half-brother. He also had a lived-in girlfriend who was no blood relation to either child. The boy was like 30 pounds total when he was found at 7 years old. This poor child was made to use a litter box the last few weeks of his life, kept in a small linen closet. And to think, his stepfather was a cook. If there were money issues, he could have easily taken food from the restaurant. Nobody would have known. Employees got a free meal each shift. He had so many ways to feed this child. He was sentenced to life in prison. I still think of this poor kid who never had a chance, and about the guy who had hurt him, who was unassuming, friendly but quiet or shy, and capable of a job and training others for it. What is wrong with people like him? What made him think, like, you deserve this? It still haunts me to this day. How did this happen? And how did this man have so much hate in his heart? And to convince an adult woman of the same, to not get him help. Morale is, I guess you never really can judge a book by its cover. This happened a handful of years ago. We had a transfer come on the team for another department within the company. He was nearly completely deaf, meaning he could hear really, really loud noises, but nothing else. He did quite well speaking out loud, and he read lips to understand what was being said to him. No big deal, it was just an easy adjustment to make, since you faced him when talking and talked one at a time. He was a decent team member in the beginning, but after a while started making comments to me and the only other female on the team. Things like, why haven't you made the coffee yet? And just other stupid old school jokes that made fun of women. My role gave him instructions on customer requests and needs. He would often not follow the instructions, and I would get calls from customers complaining. Often I had to let him know that he had to go back and fix the work so it matched the original request. Afterwards, he would storm into my office and yell at me as if his inability to read and follow simple instructions were my fault. I got tired of it and said, do your job right the first time and there wouldn't be complaints. This, of course, didn't go over well with him. His anger was very unnerving. I got the feeling it wasn't going to stop there. In the following weeks, he would intentionally block doorways that I would be trying to go through. One time, I was in the other female worker's small office and he blocked the entire doorway. He stood there and smiled this super creepy smile as if he were saying, what are you going to do about it? I refused to touch him to try and push past him. The other lady kept looking at me like she was beyond uncomfortable too. It was like we read each other's minds, and we kept having our own conversation about something work-related and ignored him. After several minutes, he left. Another time, I had to go to the far back of the warehouse to organize some stuff in the room. I remember going in and thinking, okay, there are 2 cameras and they can see this main hallway, but not between the shelving units. I had the uneasy feeling that he would come back there. Sure enough, a few minutes later, he came barging in the room and came right at me. I had already been on high alert, so I quickly exited the other door in the room and booked it back to where the rest of the team was. I pulled up the security cameras to see if he had a reason to be in there. Sure enough, he paced in the room for a few minutes after I bolted and then he left. He clearly had no reason to be in there that exact moment I was. I shared this with a male coworker friend and he said he would go back with me to any of the spaces away from the main team areas. I had to get my work done, but I didn't trust I could do it without this angry guy finding me. Anytime we would make comments about his anger or demeaning jokes, the managers would say, oh, maybe he didn't understand because he talks too fast, or I bet it was just a misunderstanding, as if having a disability means you can't also be a disgusting person. Not too long after that, I heard from a teammate that this angry guy had grabbed the other female's upper thigh, literally right below a private area, squeezed and said, does this make you uncomfortable? Then laughed. A few teammates witnessed it but didn't know what to do as the other female worker froze up. I immediately went to HR and told them everything he had been doing to intimidate, belittle, trap, and of course the sexual harassment. He was fired the next day. When they escorted him out, he yelled, this is retaliation. HR asked me what I would make of that comment and all I could think was that it had to do with me standing my ground with him. I was so scared to see him show up unexpectedly. I told my family what he looked like, his tattoos, the car he drove, anything that would identify him since they never met him. I blocked him from every social media platform too. After he was let go, other females came forward and shared things he said or did to them too. They had told managers but they dismissed it because the guy is deaf and they didn't want to deal with any lawsuits. As much as I hate what he did to my coworker, I'm grateful it gave that final boost to get him fired. This might not be as scary as the other stories on here, but it gives me the jeebies. My uncle was the main male figure in my life growing up, as I had a single mom. He was always a bit out there, but to me, I thought of him just as my crazy uncle and I trusted him. However, this changed pretty quickly after this story. My uncle owned a boat and he used to take me and my siblings out around where we live in Australia. 14-year-old me, who had been awkwardly talking to my crush before going back to the boat. My uncle started pestering me straight away, asking me who he was and if he was my boyfriend or not. I thought it was weird and told him so. I was being sassy, but he took it in a way I didn't expect and seemed genuinely annoyed. We got into an argument and I ended up leaning over the side of the boat sulking. He told me several times to stop it. Suddenly, he pushed me and held my head underwater. I thought it was a bad joke at first, but he held me under for way too long. I started panicking and my vision was blurring. He then let me go and started laughing at me. I was obviously terrified and upset and immediately told my mom, but my uncle said that I was lying and just wanted attention. My mom didn't believe me. I never trusted him again after this, and I still have a bad fear of water. I'd always blame myself for what happened on the boat because I was talking back to him. My crush ended up becoming my boyfriend, and he never liked my uncle either and told me so. My uncle was always picking fights with him. I have twin sisters who are around 2 years younger than me. Because I'm the big sister, I used to shelter them from him the best that I could. But they were old enough to know what was up. It wasn't a normal relationship between me and my uncle, and he used to call me dumb to my face, but tell others that I was naive and immature for my age. He also used to play fight with us a lot. On more than one occasion, he has pulled us on his lap and tickled us and wouldn't let go until we literally had to fight him to get off. My sisters and I try to not speak to him, obviously, but he still tries to contact us. He's not related to us by blood, but it doesn't make it any better. My aunt, mom's sister, also told me that he and his brother were arrested in the late 80s or early 90s for threatening to shoot their brother's ex-girlfriend. I don't know the full story behind that one. I'm 19 now and I'm so angry that I've never reported him or told anyone apart from friends. I still panic when water is over my head. I, 29 female, had a very strange encounter with an older man back in college. Like many college students, I was struggling for money. I lived in an area most would consider wealthy. It was a very popular tourist destination for rich families. As a result of that, I decided that it would be a good idea to go on a sugar baby website to try and earn a passive income. I'd heard horror stories from prior sugar babies and would get cold feet when talking about meeting up with men online. At one point, I decided to suck it up as I needed money to pay rent and made plans to meet up with one of them. It was nothing extravagant, just a trip a few hours out of town to a popular hot spring. I was still nervous and extremely cautious as the trip approached and made sure all my friends had my location and all the information about this man in case something were to happen. The night before the trip, he had reached out to confirm the plan and wanted to make sure I felt as comfortable as possible. He asked if I needed him to pick me up and if I wanted my own room at the hotel, just in case I wasn't wanting to stay in a room with him. I told him I would drive myself, so I'd be able to leave freely at any time, and said I'd like my own room. Arriving to meet him, the nerves kept growing. I should have listened to my gut. When I arrived at the hotel, it wasn't anything but what I had expected. It was a tiny, dingy motel with about 10 rooms and looked almost abandoned. I saw the man standing outside talking to who I assumed was a worker. They seemed friendly, like old pals. I got out of my car and went to meet the man face to face for the first time. He was nothing like I had expected. He looked very dirty and tired. He asked if I wanted to take my things to the room, and as he opened the door, I saw 2 beds, one of which already had his belongings scattered about. I asked about the separate room, to which he informed me the motel was sold out for the night, so we would have to share. I should have gotten in my car and left, but I was tired after the long drive and it was getting dark. Sharing a room with a stranger seemed more logical than driving hours home on roads I wasn't familiar with for miles and miles without cell service in the dark. After I put my belongings in the room, the man suggested we go to dinner. He said it was just down the road and he would drive. I agreed and got into his truck. I immediately noticed how disgusting it was. There was mud everywhere and all the plastic was caked with a thick layer of what I assume was dog slobber and hair. He got on the main road for the town and drove towards the restaurant. My understanding was that it was just down the road. I was incorrect. We drove for about 30 minutes before arriving in the next town over, where the restaurant was actually located. Sitting down to eat, I was filled with dread. I didn't want to be there any longer, but it would definitely be too late to drive home once I got back to my car. I ate pretty quickly and tried to keep the conversation polite and friendly, as this man seemed to be somebody I wouldn't want to anger. When we got back to the motel, I was searching for anywhere else to stay in the area, but everything was something I couldn't afford. He then offered to take me to the hot springs, and I agreed again, as being in a public area felt the safest. After arriving at the hot spring, he enlightened me to why he picked that specific location. A girl he used to see worked there, and he wanted to make her jealous. After a little while, it seemed like he realized she no longer worked there and wanted to go back to the motel. Back in the room, he began talking about his life, and I started to think that maybe he wasn't as creepy as I had thought. Maybe he's just a lonely old man who wanted some company. I became more relaxed as the conversations went on, until he started talking about his ex-wives. I'm a little fuzzy on the exact details of the conversation, as it became tense and panicked with every sentence he added. What I do remember is that his first wife was murdered, and he came home to find her body, and the second one had gone missing, and the police believe she was killed and hidden somewhere. I calmly excused myself to the bathroom and started texting my male friend I had, asking them to come to me. It was almost 2 a.m. at this point, and nobody was willing to make the drive. I did have one friend who called me and told me to leave the call running as long as I needed until I could leave. I came out of the bathroom and let the man know that I was going to sleep. He said it was a good idea since it was so late and headed into the bathroom. He came out after just a few seconds holding an old straight razor. He asked if I would be willing to help him shave his face before bed and made a comment about how nice the razor feels on his neck. I declined and told him I was really tired and would be going to bed. I put my phone on the charger with the call still running, set my alarm for sunrise, and tried my best to pretend to be asleep. For the next few hours, I could hear him walking around the room and rummaging through his belongings. I am certain at one point he was standing at the foot of my bed watching me sleep. As soon as my alarm went off, I got up, ran to the bathroom, and changed. When I came out of the bathroom, he was fully dressed and the front door was wide open. His whole demeanor had changed from the night before. He was angry. I grabbed all of my items and headed towards the door. As I was leaving, he threw some money at me and yelled that I need to get all of my stuff out of the fridge, which was just a half-empty bottle of Gatorade. As I was pulling out of the parking lot, I noticed the surprising lack of vehicles for a place that was supposed to be sold out. When I got home, I went to delete my profile off the site and saw I had a message from the man. He said he wanted to let me know how nice it was to spend time with me and wanted to come visit me in the near future. So, I live in a county that was pretty rural until the last 10 or 15 years. The biggest town in our county is pretty crowded now. Overcrowded, and I hate it. I moved from there to the countryside. I like where I live, except it can be really creepy at night because for miles and miles, it's dark and has no streetlights. One thing about this county is that the main roads always get backed up real quick if there's an accident or whatever, so it pays to go to the back roads. The back roads, like any other rural place, are less populated, dark, and have lots of trees. And no sidewalks, of course. Anyways, a few years ago, something happened that almost made me stop using them. I was driving home kind of late one night. I decided to take one particular back road that shaved off 10 minutes from my commute home. I was tired and had to get up early, so I was going fast trying to get home. This road is a little bit more populated than some, but it is super spooky in some stretches because huge trees are alongside the road and their branches and leaves make a tunnel of sorts. So I'm zipping through and around a curve. Up ahead, I see what I thought was a giant garden flag. You know the flags that people put up in spring in their yards? Well, I thought it was a weird flag because it seemed like it was fairly tall and large, and it was in the middle of the road. As I get closer, my headlights hit it, and it's not a flag. It is a person. A lady. She was wearing a red fez. I live in rural Maryland, and you don't just see a fez every day. A long flowy white dress and an orange reflective sash across her chest. A little strange because she's in the middle of the street. As I drove past her, it got weirder. As dark as it was, as I drove by, I could see that she was about 60. She had glasses and I could see her bright blue eyes. She looked in my passenger window and she started doing this weird bounce thing. I thought she was going to try and get into my car. Mind you, I'm going pretty fast. I don't know what it was about her, but she freaked me the heck out. I didn't think she would try to rob me or anything. I really thought she was a soul snatcher or a skinwalker, to be honest. I honestly don't think she was human. I can't adequately describe how creepy she was. I sped past her as fast as I could. I kept glancing in my back seat to make sure she had not materialized in my car. I prayed, recited scripture, and kept watching my rearview mirror. It was spring, so a little bit warm, but I felt bone-chillingly cold. I could finally make it home, and I run in to tell my mom the story. I got in just as my brother was telling my mom about this weird lady he saw as he was driving. It was the same lady, but he saw her at the intersection from the highway in the back road, whereas I saw her further down the road. We both had the same reaction. She also tried looking in his car. She also was bouncing around when he saw her. He said there was a car in front of him that sped off so fast when they drove past the lady. My brother was so freaked out that he won't travel that road anymore, even during the day. Eventually, I found out that the lady lives in the woods. Apparently at one time her family lived on that road. Her father was ill and she tried to take him to the hospital. He died on the way there and she drove around with his body in her car for hours. I guess she has mental health issues and I think she lost the house or got kicked out. I have friends that live off that street, so when I was talking about it, they knew exactly who it was. I still go on that road, but I haven't seen her since. I do hope she's okay, of course, but I really do not want to run into her again. To preface this and give some context, I am a 21-year-old male who makes a habit of taking road trips across the US and am not one who is inexperienced when it comes to hiking or dangerous situations. I've had people stalk my camp in Kansas and stare over my fire in Utah with a shotgun. Point being, I've had weird experiences, but none that have ever chilled me like this. This just happened earlier today, and I want to get it out while the image is still sharp in my mind. I was out hiking in a trail in southern Indiana with a female friend of mine. It was around 90 degrees and muggy as all get out. The trail is the Three Lakes Trail, and it is a little over 10 miles long and is circular, so nearly impossible to get lost. We had arrived early in the morning, and so there was almost nobody in the park at all, save for a few parked vehicles. We had been hiking the trail for about 3 hours and not seen a soul. Usually I pay attention to my surroundings a bit more and am cautious of people just because of life experiences and the subreddit even, but with good conversation and laughs, I was distracted. My friends and I are walking downhill towards a sharp left turn when out of seemingly nowhere, a woman steps around the bend and starts hiking up the hill towards us with her head down. She was average height, but much more muscular than a typical woman. She is wearing a sports bra, short shorts, and a backpack, which left most of her body exposed. Her tattoos are what first caught my eye. All across her body are those weird shapes and symbols that didn't make much sense. I didn't see anything that resembled a picture or English words. As she came within about 10 feet of us, she looked up and we made eye contact. That is when everything in me just froze up. Her face had similar symbols tattooed all over and in strings all over her face. Her eyes, though, are what I'll remember for a long time. They were just black sockets, and in the shade of the dense canopy, I couldn't make out that much about what it actually was. With how humid it was that day, I don't believe that the dark sockets were makeup, and so I assumed that all around her eyes were tattooed solid black. On top of this, she must have had colored contacts in her eyes, as there was no white at all. With every horror and cult scenario I've ever heard running through my mind, and her face chilling me to the soul, I blurt out, "Good day for a hike." She just looks at me with this empty stare, holds eye contact, and walks by us. I have never been so shaken up from running into someone out on a trail before, and hope to never see something like that again. In high school, I was a band nerd. During the time of this story, I was a sophomore, 15 female, and was in my second year as a majorette. I had previously played an instrument but found my way to a baton at some point. Because the band was pretty well respected, we often had music majors from the local college interning with our band director. This year we had 3. A 20-something woman working with the flag line, a 24-year-old man working with the drum line, and a 25-year-old man working as an assistant band director or intern. They started working with our groups at the end of the summer during band camp, so we became somewhat familiar with them fairly early into the year. That is how the whole band knew that the flag intern and the band director intern were actually engaged to be married. As teens do, we thought it was super romantic. Not long after the start of the school year, the band director intern was already trying to be cool with all the teens, joking around and being relatable. I can't remember his last name, but his first name was Brian. Red flag number 1, probably. Overall, he seemed charming and safe in a very stereotypical nerd kind of way. Plus, his fiancée was always nearby. I started to feel a mixture of special and uncomfortable when Brian began focusing a little bit more attention on me specifically. At first, I wrote it off as him choosing to speak to me as the majorette captain. A bit of a near peer authority position, my 15-year-old brain reasoned. The discomfort started to become squirmy when he offered me his phone number if I needed anything ever. I knew for certain that he hadn't offered this to other section leads, so this was a choice that singled me out. After that point, things rapidly moved into a place that made me feel less special and more targeted. It is hard to remember a lot of the specifics. I have vague memories of avoiding him on away game bus rides and asking why Tanya, the fiancée, wasn't riding on the same bus. More vagueness around avoiding him during and after practices, feeling a little bit more concerned at times, and eventually outright declining some kinds of romantic invitations. I can't remember when he started mentioning how pretty I was or how I needed to be careful wearing such short practice shorts. I do remember dreading the first time I had to wear our skimpy majorette uniform with him around. Previous experience, aforementioned sad stories, had taught me not to be quiet about this. I started by jokingly alerting friends about the escalating focused attention, then by telling my then senior class sister that he was saying increasingly creepy and inappropriate things. It was only a few days after I told my sister that the last incident with Brian occurred. A few times during the weeks of band camp, he had offered to give me a ride home. I always declined. It was unnecessary but also previous experience, so I knew I had never given him an address or directions to my very rural house, which is why it was the height of scary and creepy. When his car pulled up beside me one Saturday as I was walking down the road in front of my house, we would often walk down our wooded country road, when the weather was nice. Alarm bells clanging, I curtly asked him what he was doing there. He calmly said he was just in the area. Highly unlikely, given it was a residential-only, very rural, hard-to-find area. I asked if he knew this was where I lived, and he surprisingly admitted he did. Backing away from the road into the grassy tree-lined ditch, I remember consciously not smiling. I flatly responded, "No, please go." He said when he would offer me a ride. Not wanting to give any indication of where my house was, I moved further into the tree cover and began walking away. Thankfully, my grandfather was an old-school tech head, so I had a bulky cell phone in my pocket. I immediately dialed my sister's cell and filled her in. Thankful for her. She was revving the 1982 engine of her 280Z hatchback for all of its worth when she pulled up. Creepy Brian had been slowly cruising back and forth along the strip of country road where I had camouflaged myself in the trees. As soon as I heard my sister's engine, I headed back towards the road, where I found her stopped in the oncoming traffic lane, shouting through her lowered passenger window at this grown man. Her face in that moment is etched into my memory. I immediately felt safer. Remembering that look still makes me feel warm and secure. I gave his car a wide berth as my sister moved forward to give me access to the passenger door. Pulling a three-pointer, she again stopped by his car and let him know she would call the school, the police, the university, and my grandpa if he didn't turn his happy ass right around and get the heck off our road. We followed his car back to the highway and watched him drive far enough to be comfortable before we went back home. She and I both reported all of the creepy, questionable behavior to the band director and school officials. She had connections in the music department of the university. Musical prodigy, long story, and reported him there also. He did not return to my high school and, as far as I am aware, did not graduate from our local college. It later turned out that the fiancé, who continued to appear at games and practices with flag twirlers, had heard something about his targeting me from those girls. I hadn't known how obvious his attention was, but rumors had been flying, so much so that barely anybody questioned the reason for his sudden absence. From what I understand, she initially stayed with him, but the engagement was eventually broken, and she really never looked me directly in the eye after that day. All that to say this, it frightens me to remember how casually other teenage girls responded to their witnessing his behavior towards me. Some girls even showed hints of envy or jealousy, which makes me sad to remember. Some teenage girls can become so desensitized to the inappropriate attentions and advances of boys and men. They giggle and joke and relate to the creeped out feelings, sometimes missing the subtle red flags that indicate a situation is becoming actually dangerous. If my sister had not given me a safe place to say how he really made me feel, who knows how much further that situation could have escalated. I hope you all really talk to the teenage girls in your life. Be their safe person with no judgment if you can. If you made it this far, thank you for reading or listening. This felt like a cleansing purge. I used to be naively helpful to all sorts of strangers and often picked up hitchhikers solo and in groups, and got them where they needed to go. When I was 19, I had moved to Huntington, a college town in West Virginia, and I worked at a popular bar. My shifts would start at around 9 p.m. and end at about 2 a.m. I didn't know anybody in this town or state even, and I had been there on my own for only a month or so. On one of these nights, one of the customers had taken an interest in conversing with me while I was working my shift. I, being a good employee, conversed pleasantly back. He was in his 30s or 40s, buzzed white hair, with a group of other guys, all of them tattooed and with leather jackets. Nothing against leather or tattoos. I have and wear both. Just giving visual details. He had been there going back and forth between them at their table and me at the bar, pretty much talking to me nonstop for a good couple of hours. At around 1:30 a.m., he mentions he doesn't know where his friends went. I look up, oblivious, and see the whole bar had virtually cleared out. He was right. Not one of his buddies was in sight. He says they must have all gotten drunk and forgot about him, leaving him there. The man is clearly bummed and concerned because, as he tells me, he lives almost an hour away from here and has no way of getting home now. And it's the middle of winter, so it's snowing pretty hard. He spends the next few minutes on the phone calling the different friends that were at the bar with him, but nobody is answering. He is clearly screwed. I can't leave him in the bar, and I can't in good conscience leave the man out in the snow. So dang, now I've got to drive this stranger home in a place I'm unfamiliar with in conditions I've never really driven in before. No snow in my home state. I tell him, don't worry, when I finish cleaning the bar and closing up, I'll take him home. And I do. We get in the car and he gives me directions as we go. We are talking casually like we had been, just superficial conversation, nothing even hinting at sexual or flirty. I'm not a flirty person, so I'm positive there was no misunderstanding here. Keep in mind it's like 2 in the morning. No one knows where I am or that I'm with this rando, and it's snowing heavily. As we are chatting, suddenly I feel his hand on the back of my neck. It was such an unpleasant feeling. I remember his fingers swirling in the little hairs at the bottom of my hairline, which were too short to make it into the ponytail. I scrunched my neck and just calmly said, I have a knife, as I kept looking forward while driving. The swirling ceased, but the hand lingered on my skin. Again calmly but more firmly, I said, I have a knife. He removed his hand and we kept driving. I figure whatever that was is handled, and we get back to our conversation. Minutes later, I feel his hand fully against the back of my neck, his fingers wrapped gently around its curve. I scrunched my neck again and said, seriously, I have a knife. I have a knife. He removed his hand once more, and then in a very hurt tone, he said, are you really scared of me? After that, he kept his hands to himself. It was a long 1-hour drive, but I got him home and I took off. I'm 29 now, and it wasn't until many years later that it occurred to me that the whole thing was probably a setup he and his friends planned. They probably left him stranded so that the chick he'd been talking to all night will have to take him home, opening the door for sex, consensual or maybe even not. Moral of the story, don't let people you don't know in your car, and also carry a knife.